Chapter 220. Why is it here? Qin Tao nudged Air Mao with his elbow and asked. How would I know? This cat always comes and goes like a ghost. Air Mao was also depressed. How could a cat be so troublesome? There was still some distance from Tsinghua University to here, right? Could a cat really be able to walk a long distance? But it would be at night. There were so many people and cars in the day. It didn't make sense. Just as he was thinking about the reason, Air Mao's phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, Air Mao's eyes narrowed and he immediately picked up. Seeing Air Mao like this, Zheng Tan and Qin Tao thought something big had happened. They didn't make a fuss and quietly waited for Air Mao to finish the call. It's really here? Air Mao's voice went up a notch when he heard the voice. He felt that he was too excited and calmed down. Okay, I'll go back right away. Thank you. I'll treat you to a drink next time. After hanging up, Air Mao's face was gloomy. Damn it. It's really her. That cat actually dares to come over. Which cat? That little bastard that only shows its teeth when it sees me. Air Mao said angrily. How long has it been since Black Rice gave birth? I finally had a few days to relax, and this bastard came over again. If they relapse and give birth to another litter of kittens, I'll be tortured to death. When Air Mao said this, Zheng Tan knew that Peanut Candy must have run to the courtyard again. Qin Tao laughed gloatingly. Speaking of which, it's been 4 months since your Black Rice gave birth. She can definitely give birth to another litter. I've seen a mother cat get pregnant again before her kittens left. Shut up. Air Mao raised his leg and kicked Qin Tao. You're asking for a beating. Qin Tao jumped up to avoid the kick and made an orchid gesture. Come on, hit me. Zheng Tan and Air Mao were speechless. They suddenly felt that this person was getting more and more despicable. Air Mao didn't have time to play with Qin Tao. I'll go first. Go find your goddess yourself. If you catch her, I'll treat you to a meal. Got it. Cat slave Mao, hurry up and go home. I heard that cats are hard to keep. Even if it's on the 3rd floor, it can probably escape. There are many ways that you can't think of. Before Qin Tao could finish, Air Mao ran away like the wind. TSK, look at him. He's just a cat slave. Qin Tao looked at Air Mao's back with disdain. He probably felt too bored and wanted to talk but couldn't find anyone. Looking around, Qin Tao's gaze fell on Zheng Tan. He waved at Zheng Tan and took out his phone to show Zheng Tan the photo album. Qin Tao's mobile phone was a new model with a large color screen. Compared to current mobile phones, it was considered high-end. The screen was slightly larger than other mobile phones, and the photo on it was also clearer. Zheng Tan stood at the top, some distance away from the bottom. He looked to the side and walked down a staircase not far away. He looked at the photo on Qin Tao's phone. Qin Tao squatted down and handed the phone to Zheng Tan. He had to admit that the girl on the phone was quite pretty. How is it? Isn't she pretty? And this was without makeup. Love at first sight. Understand? Qin Tao raised his head and covered his chest as if he was deeply in love. The gentleness when you lowered your head was just like the shyness of a lotus flower in the cool breeze. He even recited a poem. Zheng Tan shook off the goosebumps and despised him in his heart. According to the rumors he had heard about Qin Tao, this guy's love at first sight was too easy and too cheap. Sure enough, the deep love on Qin Tao's face soon became wretched. He raised his hand and drew a heart in the air. Do you know why the heart is in this shape? Zheng Tan looked at him. This is the shape of a woman's buttocks when she bends. Qin Tao shook his head regretfully. TSK, a cat like you won't understand the meaning of this shape. Zheng Tan poked at his sore spot. Zheng Tan wanted to say, King understood it deeply too. Unfortunately, the King god had turned him into this. CK, do you King know my pain? Just like what Air Mao said before it left, this guy really deserved a beating. As they were talking, Qin Tao's phone rang with a text message. After reading the content of the phone, Qin Tao's smile widened. I won't chat with you anymore. I'm going to meet the beauty. Qin Tao waved the text message on his phone in front of Zheng Tan. He didn't expect a cat to understand it. He just wanted to satisfy his vanity. Zheng Tan looked at it. The sender was Beauty Chen. Before he could read the content of the text message, Qin Tao took the phone back. Qin Tao took out a small and delicate bottle of perfume and sprayed it on his wrist. He touched his middle finger and ring finger on his wrist, then touched the back of his ear, the back of his neck, and his hairline. He even combed his hair. Not only did this guy like to be cheap, but he was also very showy. After Qin Tao finished tidying up, he couldn't wait to meet the beauty. Zheng Tan sighed in his heart. Another good cabbage had been eaten by a pig. However, Zheng Tan recalled the familiar feeling he felt from Qin Tao. Only then did he remember that he was also like this in the past. However, now it seemed that compared to Qin Tao, Zheng Tan didn't have the capital to squander like Qin Tao. He didn't know why he thought he was so awesome in the past. Zheng Tan suddenly felt that looking down on Qin Tao's behavior was very funny. It was like mocking himself in the past. As he was looking, Zheng Tan felt a pain in his head. A branch fell on his head and then fell beside his feet. Fortunately, the branch wasn't too thick. In addition, Zheng Tan's resistance to attacks was stronger. Zheng Tan didn't get a concussion from the hit. He looked up and squinted his eyes to look at the culprit. That guy was panting with his tongue out and barking at Zheng Tan. "Call your grandfather. F***ck, he even knows how to sneak attack." Zheng Tan ran up the stairs and slapped Cola twice with his paws. After Tan Fong finished a round, he saw a cat and a dog chasing after each other. He said happily, "Look, these two are playing so well." At the same time, Tan Fong was happy for his wise decision to bring the cat along. Even though he had just lost a round, his mood wasn't that bad. After slapping Cola a few times, Cola saw a mouse and went to block it. Zheng Tan wasn't in the mood to play with the mouse. He decided to walk around. Maybe he could see a few beauties. The staff dormitory area was at the edge of the school. It was closer to some of the side streets outside. However, it wasn't the end of the school day, so there weren't many students walking around. As he walked along the side of the side street, Zheng Tan looked at the snack bars on both sides. He really felt a little hungry after smelling the food. As he walked, Zheng Tan saw a few young people in front of him. Originally, Zheng Tan didn't plan to pay attention to these people. However, after hearing their conversation, Zheng Tan slowed down his footsteps. "You think you're so great just because you drive a car that costs 100,000? You're just a frog in a well." That's right. He even wants to hit on Beauty Chin. He's overestimating himself. He's looking for death. If he dares to go again, it won't be as simple as getting hit with a stick. The leader handed the phone in his hand to another young man. "Return the phone to Beauty Chin from your class. Don't let her know about this." "Beauty Chin? Isn't she the prettiest girl in a certain school that Qin Tao mentioned before?" Then, the looking for death these people were talking about couldn't be Qin Tao, right? Looking at these people, it seemed like they had just finished beating someone up. Two of them were carrying a long bag in their hands. Judging from the shape of the bag when it shook, it seemed like something like a steel rod. When they walked past Zheng Tan smelled the smell of blood. There was also the smell of Qin Tao's perfume. Sure enough, Qin Tao must have been beaten up. "Hey, did you guys do something bad again?" A girl riding a bicycle came out from the side door and asked when she saw them. "No, we just finished yoga. There are yoga mats inside. Do you want to see?" A young man shook the long bag in his hand and said with a smirk. The girl pursed her lips. Obviously, she didn't believe him. However, she didn't say much and rode away. She didn't dare to take these people seriously. The young men didn't care about the black cat that had just passed by them. There were many cat owners around here. They didn't have the interest to pay attention to a cat. Zheng Tan looked in the direction that the young men had come from. He turned a corner at the fork and went into a slightly more secluded alley. Not long after, Zheng Tan smelled the smell of blood. He quickly ran over to take a look. The person who had confidently gone to pick up a girl an hour ago was now lying on the ground with a pig's head. Next to him was the new phone that used The Legend of the Hungry Wolf as its ringtone. At this moment, the screen was broken and the battery was thrown out. Ermao was right. That brat was really beaten up. Zheng Tan walked closer. Seeing that the person was still breathing but didn't open his eyes, he raised his paw and patted Qin Tao. Qin Tao opened his eyes and saw a black cat's face in front of him. He then pulled the corner of his mouth and said, "Fortunately, it's you. Otherwise, if other people saw me like this, they would lose a lot of face." Qin Tao sat up, touched the blood from his nose, and casually wiped it on his clothes. He sat there without making a sound. Zheng Tan thought for a moment and ran out of the alley. When he passed by a shop, he saw a roll of toilet paper in front of the door. It was probably dropped when the shop owner was moving goods. It was the kind of low-quality toilet paper used in restaurants. It hadn't been used yet and wouldn't fall apart even if it was rolled. When Qin Tao heard the noise and looked over, he saw the black cat playing with a roll of low-quality toilet paper used in food stalls like it was playing with a toy. Although Qin Tao usually didn't use this kind of toilet paper, the situation was different now. He picked up the toilet paper at his feet and used some to wipe the mud and blood on his body. At least he didn't look so bad. It was better than going out with blood all over his body. Feeling the rough texture of the low-quality toilet paper, Qin Tao said to Zheng Tan, "Don't tell Air Mao and the others. It's too king embarrassing." After a pause, he said, "When a tiger falls, he will be bullied by dogs." After wiping, Qin Tao took out a twisted cigarette from his pocket. The lighter was still working. He lit the cigarette and sat there smoking in silence. After finishing the cigarette, Qin Tao used a tissue to wipe the blood from his wound. It was king painful, but fortunately he had protected a few vital parts. His life was not in danger. After smoking, Qin Tao got up and took off his jacket that was full of blood and footprints. However, he didn't throw it away. He put it on his shoulder. "Thank you, Brother Cat." Zheng Tan was worried about Qin Tao. Although Qin Tao was not a good person, he was Air Mao's friend after all. It was better to keep an eye on him. Following Qin Tao out of the other end of the alley, Zheng Tan looked around. This place was a little closer to the staff dormitory. It was in a V shape. After walking out, they found that it was not far from the other entrance of the side street. After coming out of the alley, Zheng Tan saw that the windshield of the car parked not far from the alley had several holes. Zheng Tan looked at the car and felt that it was quite familiar. Just as he thought of this, he heard Qin Tao say in a relieved tone, "Fortunately, this car is Air Mao's. It's cheap and not worth much." Zheng Tan. No wonder it was familiar. Last month, Qin Tao lost a bet with Air Mao. They exchanged cars. Air Mao bought a car that was worth about 100,000 for Qin Tao to drive, and Qin Tao's luxury car that was worth 1 million was driven everywhere by Air Mao. Previously, Qin Tao was quite depressed, but now it seemed that if his car was smashed, the loss would be great. However, if it was really his luxury car that was worth 1 million, would these people really dare to smash it? Shaking his head, Qin Tao stopped thinking about it. No matter what, it had happened. What should be done was done. Some people around pointed at the car, but Qin Tao did not care. He opened the door and got in. There were a few stones in the car. They were probably used to smash the car. If it was my car, it would not have been smashed so easily. Air Mao's cheap car is really lousy. While complaining, Qin Tao picked up a few stones from the car, took out a bag, and put a few stones in it. He threw them on the passenger seat, together with his coat. Qin Tao's eyes looking at the stones made Zheng Tan feel uncomfortable. He mourned for those people in his heart. How could Qin Tao take this lying down? However, Zheng Tan did not have the leisure to care about that. Qin Tao could do whatever he wanted. Those people did not look like good people. They must have done this kind of thing often. However, was it really okay for Qin Tao to drive like this? What if he suddenly became dizzy and had an accident? Qin Tao was not worried about this at all. After tidying up the car, he checked that the car could still be driven. He waved to Zheng Tan and left. Chapter 221. After that incident, Zheng Tan did not see Qin Tao for a while. Qin Tao would occasionally come to the courtyard to look for Air Mao, but he was probably afraid of losing face and wanted to wait until his injury was better. Zheng Tan passed by the 3rd floor one day when he went out. The door was still open, and he could hear Air Mao talking on the phone. Air Mao was very angry. He could not find Qin Tao recently, so he asked around for some information. After he found out, Air Mao did not intervene because Qin Tao said that he wanted to solve it himself. Air Mao let him do whatever he wanted. With Qin Tao's ability, he would not lose face if he was prepared. During this period, Zheng Tan followed Tan Fong to Beijing Normal University a few times and heard some gossip. From the students, Zheng Tan knew that Qin Tao had taken revenge. Basically, everyone who was involved in that incident was beaten up and sent to the hospital. They would be hospitalized for at least 1 or 2 months. When the students who were shopping on the side street were talking about this matter, they didn't know that the other party was Qin Tao, but this didn't stop them from gloating. Thinking about it, the number of students who didn't like those people and had suffered losses at their hands wasn't small. Just like what the students had analyzed during their discussion, neither side was easy to deal with. Qin Tao had taken revenge, but the discussion about this incident in Beijing Normal University's BBS was still ongoing. Even Tan Fong and Mao mentioned it once when they were playing chess. However, it was only mentioned as a topic, and it led to a sentence that many people lamented: students nowadays. When Zheng Tan saw Qin Tao again, it was almost New Year's Day. When Qin Tao came to look for Mao, the injury on his face was no longer visible. He even asked Zheng Tan to come down from upstairs and bought a lot of imported cat food to express his gratitude. Zheng Tan stared at the pile of cat food and wanted to kick Qin Tao's face. "You can eat the cat food yourself." Mao looked at the cat food and tried to hold back its laughter. "Beast, don't you know that this cat does not eat cat food?" Qin Tao looked at the unhappy Zheng Tan. "I also asked my friends over there. They said that no matter what breed the cat is, it will definitely fall in love with this cat food. And I don't know what kind of food it likes, so I bought some of each kind, dry and wet food, and even canned cat food." As he spoke, Qin Tao even took out a disposable cup from Mao. He opened a bag of dry food and poured some into the cup. Then he placed the cup in front of Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan pulled his ears and looked at Qin Tao. He slapped the paper cup filled with cat food in front of him. "You can king eat it yourself." Black Rice, who was lying on the sofa, saw the cat food scattered on the floor. It jumped down and sniffed, then sneezed. "Look, my family doesn't even eat the black rice. You know, my black rice has always been eating cat food," Mao said. Qin Tao's expression changed, and he threw the bag of cat food on the ground. "Those bastards lied to me." "Maybe not. Cats are still picky about their food. No matter what, this black coal won't eat cat food. It's a waste to throw it away. Leave it here. I'll send it to the rescue station and feed it to the cats there." "Up to you." Qin Tao waved his hand. He didn't want to talk about this anymore. He turned to the black cat and said, "Brother cat, I don't know how to thank you. When you go to Pearl City, I'll take care of your food and drink." If it was in the past, Qin Tao would never talk to a cat like this. "Ready to go?" Mao asked. "Yes, my mom is urging me. No matter how unwilling I am, I have to go. Otherwise, I'll be dragged back to the capital. Pearl City is better than the capital. If I stay in the capital, I'll probably be nagged to death by the old man." "That's right. If you go back to the capital, you'll be beaten up first. And you can't fight back. After that, you'll be watched." Mao nodded in agreement. It was just like how it didn't dare to go back to the capital. "I've fixed the car for you and modified it. It's much better than your old car." Qin Tao threw the car key to Mao. "You should be more careful in the future. Don't get tricked again," Mao said. "I know. I was too careless this time. I was too proud and didn't keep my guard up." Before Qin Tao left Chuhua City, Mao and a few other people who were close to him sent him off. They went to have fun for a night. Qin Tao wanted to send Zheng Tan along, but Zheng Tan didn't go. He still had to earn money to support his family. Every year at the end of the year, especially during Christmas and New Year's Day, Xiaoguo was especially busy. He arranged all kinds of activities in the pet center and was busy making more money. The employees in the shop were also very enthusiastic. Everyone wanted to perform well at the end of the year. Maybe they could get more year-end bonuses this year. The calendar year was coming to an end. Xiaoguo was going to organize an activity to film a summary of the year. It was to celebrate the new year and promote the new products in the shop. Now that Xiaoguo's pet center had expanded, there were more kinds of pet clothes sold. Nowadays, many young people like to cosplay with their pets. The pet clothes shop was also accepting orders to make pet outfits. It was not the kind of low-quality clothes, but really good materials. Many customers were not short of money now. It was said that the clothes sold well in that shop. Zheng Tan also heard that during the big Comic-Con in November, several dogs in Xiaoguo's shop were lent out to be models. Especially the pug dog, who wore a forehead protector and pretended to be a ninja dog. It was said that the scene was very popular. Countless people ran over to take photos with it. Even the popularity of the club was very high. So, don't ignore the role of an animal. That day, Zheng Tan went out with Xiaoguo's team. Now Xiaoguo was more and more particular about the effect of the shooting. Every time, he would book a place with someone and take the team out to shoot. After shooting a part, Zheng Tan rested on the side. The person responsible for serving Zheng Tan was still Charlie. They had worked together many times. Charlie knew a little about the character of this cat. Charlie felt that this cat was probably the only cat in the pet center that acted like a big shot and no one said anything about it. Not to mention that it came late and left early. Every time after shooting, it would walk around in a bad mood. Otherwise, it would be angry and not cooperate. The food it ate had to be prepared separately. The water it drank had to be clean water that no one had drunk before. It never used a leash. Moreover, these were all tacitly approved by the boss. Other staff members who had worked together for a long time saw this, but they did not say anything. Charlie could only say that it was lucky that it was only a cat. If it were a human, who would like such a bad temper? Zheng Tan did not care about what Charlie was thinking. It lay there and ate something. It was bored and watched the staff members put on props and pose for a few good-looking cats in the store. Now, the registered users on the Pet Center's official website had multiplied several times compared to last year. Every time a new video was released, it was the time when the website had the highest number of online users. There were also a lot of people leaving comments under the video. Most of them were loyal customers of the Pet Center. No wonder Xiaoguo now had so many requirements for the shooting. Yawning, Zheng Tan rolled around on the recliner. Suddenly, his ears moved. Zheng Tan heard a familiar dog bark, but it was a little far away. He could not see anything from here. Zheng Tan glanced at the shooting progress. It estimated that it would take a few more hours, so he got up, jumped off the recliner, and prepared to walk around. Charlie saw this and knew that the cat was going out for a walk again. The first time, he was scared to death. Gradually, he knew that there was no need to worry at all. Come back quickly if you want to walk around. Don't walk too far. Although your part is finished, it's hard to say when it will be res hot. Boss takes this shoot very seriously. Zheng Tan turned its head and looked at him, then continued to trot in that direction. Charlie looked at the cat running away and sighed. Although he was not sure, Charlie felt that the cat should be able to understand what he said. It came from his intuition as a veterinarian. It was not good for the cat to be too smart. It was easier to take care of the stupid ones, such as the ones that were being handled by the staff members on the set. Zheng Tan came out of the set. The wall was just a decoration for the cat. Over the wall, Zheng Tan moved his ears. Now that the dog was not barking, he recalled the direction of the sound. He walked a few steps in that direction and jumped onto a tall tree. Zheng Tan immediately found the target location. It was not that Zheng Tan had sharp eyes, but that place was too eye-catching. There were several police cars there. It would be strange if he did not notice it. He got closer and jumped onto a tree. Zheng Tan decided to watch the situation from the side. After all, there was nothing to do at the set. There were many villas around. The people who lived in this area were more or less of a certain status. There was some distance between the villas. There was a cordon around one of the villas. There were a few people in police uniforms talking outside. Some people were questioning the surrounding residents and making records. Zheng Tan also saw Senior Walnut. He was talking to a few people. However, after Senior Walnut was promoted, shouldn't this kind of thing be handled by his subordinates? Why did he come here personally? As for the dog that had barked earlier, Zheng Tan looked over and saw that the dog was being led around by someone. It seemed to be sniffing something and could not be stopped no matter how hard one tried to yell at it. The police officer who was leading it was being forcefully dragged along, and it looked like the dog was leading the man around. The greenery in this area was done well. There were many trees around. The grass was no longer green, but the surrounding evergreen trees did not give off the bleak feeling of autumn and winter. There were several holes in the grass. They were all the work of He Jin. The surrounding residents were already looking at them with disdain. This made the police officer who was leading He Jin feel a lot of pressure. He was only helping his superior look after the dog. His superior had told him to lead the dog around. Perhaps he could find some clues. However, from the looks of it, there were no clues at all. The dog was purely causing trouble. It was almost causing trouble in the grass of the neighboring family. "Hey Jean, don't cause trouble." The police officer pulled on the leash and scolded. He Jin turned to look at the police officer and bared its teeth. It seemed to be unhappy with the police officer's scolding. It looked around and found Jing Tan on a tree not far away. Woof woof woof. He Jin barked at Jing Tan a few times. It even went over to Jing Tan. Jing Tan ignored it and pretended not to know it. The police officer who was leading He Jin did not know Jing Tan. Seeing He Jin's reaction, he said helplessly, "You really just think it's fun. Don't scare other people's cats." Jing Tan looked at He Jin, who was coming over from under the tree. He felt that He Jin was seriously looking for something. It was still sniffing around the ground. Suddenly, it smelled something. It dug around and pushed away some of the leaves on the ground. It growled and raised its head to bark a few times. "You're doing it again." The police officer touched his forehead. "Since you can't dig holes in the grass, you're digging holes here." Chapter 222. The officer pulled on the leash in his hand, intending to take He Jin away. But He Jin didn't want to. It insisted on staying there, so the man and the dog pulled each other. He Jin was probably also annoyed by the young officer's actions. He turned around and pounced on the young officer as he opened his mouth and shouted at the young officer. The officer saw that He Jin was about to bite him. He got nervous and let go of the leash in his hand. He fell to the ground and took a few steps back. But He Jin didn't run away. It stayed there, sniffing around, but didn't dig anymore. Seeing that He Jin didn't run away, the officer was relieved. But he didn't want to come into contact with the dog again. It really scared him. He really thought that the dog was going to bite him. He didn't expect it to just scare him. But this dog was much fiercer than the dogs he saw in the station. It just looked obedient on the surface. Shaking his head, the officer looked at where his superior was and ran over there. It was better to get someone else to take care of the dog. He really didn't have the ability. After the officer left, Jing Tan jumped down from the tree and walked over to where He Jin was digging. He Jin, who was sniffing around, looked at Jing Tan and immediately rushed over to guard where the hole was dug. To be exact, it was where the black bug was. It was as if it was afraid that Jing Tan would mess it up. Jing Tan walked towards the bug, and He Jin immediately let out a warning growl. He retracted his foot. The warning immediately stopped. He raised his foot again and He Jin growled again. After testing a few more times, Jing Tan didn't plan to walk in that direction anymore. He looked at He Jin, then stretched his neck and sniffed the bug. He ignored He Jin's warning. He knew that as long as he didn't touch the bug, He Jin wouldn't do anything to him. He Jin only growled a warning. It didn't even bare its teeth. Compared to the officer from before, its attitude was much better. Wretch, he felt like vomiting. Jing Tan immediately retracted his neck and moved away. What the F***ck is this smell? How disgusting! Jing Tan could not tell what the smell was. Not only was it smelly, but it was also disgusting. It made Jing Tan want to throw up all the food he had eaten at the filming location. They could smell the unpleasant odor even before they got close. For humans, this odor could only be detected if they put it under their nose and sniffed it carefully, but for cats and dogs, it was too easy. Ignoring the bug, Jing Tan jumped back onto the tree. He could hear someone coming their way. It was the young police officer. He was bringing Senior Walnut over. Along the way, he looked at the holes that He Jin had dug on the lawn. "I didn't find anything. There's nothing unusual either. I even used a wooden stick to turn the place over. There's nothing buried here," the police officer explained. When he first saw the black gold digger, he was excited. He thought that he had found some evidence or a corpse, but there was nothing. There were no traces of the soil being turned over. Although his professional knowledge was not very good, he still knew some basic things. It was obvious that no one had touched the soil here. At least, no one had touched it for more than a month. Okay. Senior Walnut nodded. After looking at the small holes that He-jin had dug, he looked in the direction of the black gold digger and walked over. When Senior Walnut came over, the black gold digger wagged its tail vigorously. It seemed to be asking for praise. Senior Walnut touched its head. He did not immediately look at the holes dug by the black gold digger. Instead, he looked at the black cat in the tree. Black charcoal? Senior Walnut called out. Zheng Tan moved his ears, but did not raise his head. He continued to stare at the place where the black gold digger had dug. He did not look at Senior Walnut. It was as if he was not the one being called. Anyway, he did not have a cat tag on him. Do you know this cat? The police officer asked. Walnut shook his head. I think you're mistaken. This cat doesn't look like it was raised by someone here. There's nothing special about the breed. It probably came from somewhere else, but it looks quite strong, the police officer said. The cats raised by people around here should be the kind that was different from the rest. There were very few of them. Without saying anything, Senior Walnut turned to look at the holes dug by the black gold digger. There did not seem to be anything special about it. Just then, someone called out to him. Senior Walnut took the black gold digger and left. The black gold digger was not very happy, but it still followed. Zheng Tan squatted in the tree with his ears propped up. He listened to some of the people around him talk about what had happened there. Two people were talking. Their voices were not loud, but Zheng Tan could still hear some of it. It seemed that there had been a murder in the villa. Moreover, the person in the house did not look like a human anymore. Only the bones were left. Zheng Tan did not sneak in to see the crime scene, but he could feel the hairs on his back standing up as he listened to the two people's conversation. He felt that the two people were exaggerating. Yes, they were exaggerating too much. A gust of wind came out. Zheng Tan shivered. It was better to go back to the filming location. It was better to be bored than here. Not long after Zheng Tan left, Senior Walnut, who had finished dealing with people, looked in the direction of the tree. Seeing that the cat was no longer there, he laughed softly. Did he make a mistake? How was that possible? How could he not have noticed that the cat in the tree was not black charcoal? But was the cat also sniffing there? When he was led by the police officer to look at the hole in the grass, he noticed that the black cat was sniffing at the spot where the black gold digger was guarding. If there was nothing unusual, why would the cat and dog sniff there? This really misunderstood Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan had sniffed there out of curiosity. There was only one black bug there, and the rest was soil and dead leaves. There was nothing else to sniff. Zheng Tan did not find anything unusual. He Tao stood in place and thought for a while. He asked the police officer to wait for a while. He held the black gold digger's hand and walked back to the tree. The black gold digger was very excited. It pulled on the leash and ran in that direction. If it wasn't for Senior Walnut, it probably would have rushed over. After carefully searching the small pit, He Tao confirmed that this was the bug that He-jin was looking for. He Tao then took out a clean paper bag and put the fingernail-sized bug into it. After that, he checked the other small pits on the lawn, but he didn't find any similar black bugs. On the other hand, after Zheng Tan returned to the filming location, Charlie breathed a sigh of relief. Although he knew that the cat would come back on time, he was still worried every time. After all, if anything happened to her, he would take the biggest responsibility. Overall, the shoot was quite smooth. Zheng Tan felt that there was not much skill involved. Almost all of them passed in one go. The ones that were dragging time were the other few. When he got home, Zheng Tan did not think about what happened during the day. He went back to his usual routine and thought about where to go in the future. Around Tsinghua University, only the Jiaoyuan school was further away. Zheng Tan decided not to go there in the near future. There was no need to look at the construction site. After all, it was mostly built. Which path should he take? Zheng Tan decided to look at the map when Jiao Ma and the others were not at home. There was a detailed map of the campus and its surrounding area on the desk in the master bedroom. He would choose the right path when the time came. That night, Zheng Tan slept peacefully, but some people did not sleep at all. For example, He Tao's wife. He Tao did not return home the whole night. Yesterday, he said that he had something to do, but there was no reply. His phone could not be reached either. In the past, when he was working on a case, he would turn off his phone. However, this time, He Tao's wife felt uneasy. She waited until dawn, and after her child went to school, she called Mao. Mao was still sleeping at that time. For Mao, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning was the best time to sleep. When it was woken up by the call, it did not sound very happy. It wanted to directly reject the call, but when it saw the caller ID, it immediately picked it up. After hearing his sister-in-law's words, Mao's sleepiness disappeared. His phone has been turned off. When I called his colleagues, they said that He Tao left a long time ago. However, it seemed that he had something urgent and left with He Jin. They still haven't returned. No one in the bureau knows either, He Tao's wife said anxiously. Have you called senior brother Wei? No, I don't know the exact situation yet. Little Wei just got married not long ago, so I didn't bother him. I'm just worried. Yes, I know, sister-in-law. I'll ask a few friends first. He Tao's wife knew about Mao's background and knew that he had some ability. Otherwise, she would not have called him. After hanging up the phone, Mao scrolled through the numbers and called a few friends. An hour later, Mao scratched his head in annoyance. The situation was not good. Brother Walnut's car was found, but he was nowhere to be seen. The bureau obviously knew that there was something going on, but they did not tell his sister-in-law. As expected, his sister-in-law's worry was justified. After a while, Mao received an email. This was the information that he had asked someone to get in a short period of time. It was not comprehensive, but it gave him a general idea of what had caused this. In general, this was a bloody incident caused by a business war. It seemed very normal, but these two people were quite famous in Chuhua City and their companies were quite big. After reading it, Mao sat on the chair and thought for a while. Brother Walnut left with He Jin. What did he need to find with a dog? Mao decided to ask the cat on the 5th floor for help. It was better to be safe than sorry. Although he could borrow a well-trained dog, Mao trusted the black cat on the 5th floor more. Even if he did not like the cat on a daily basis, he had to admit that he could only ask it for help at critical times. Especially now that the situation was related to his brother. When it came to the sense of smell, cats did not necessarily lose to dogs. The reason why people often use dogs to help instead of cats was that cats were not willing to be manipulated and were not easy to train. Cats were temperamental, and their many strengths were usually fully displayed when it was beneficial to them. After sending little Pomelo home, Zheng Tan took a stroll outside. He was about to go home and look through the map to find a place to take a stroll when he saw Mao knocking on the door. Chapter 223. Zheng Tan looked at the scenery outside the car window. The car had already left Chuhua City, but he didn't know where it was headed. An hour ago, Mao had brought Zheng Tan out in a hurry. Mao had called Jiaoma in the car and made up an excuse to take Zheng Tan out to play. It might take a day or two. This was just a conservative estimate. From Mao's expression and words, Zheng Tan felt that it might take even longer. When they were leaving the city, Zheng Tan listened to Mao briefly explain what had happened. He only said that Walnut had gone missing while working on a case. Before he went missing, he had taken He Jin out. The bureau was still hiding it from Walnut's family. No matter what had happened, they had to find Walnut first. Compared to those people, Mao trusted himself more. Just as he was leaving the city, he received another text message. A friend who had helped him with the investigation had sent him a few addresses. These were the possible addresses of other transactions that the company that had declared bankruptcy had done in secret. Mao wasn't interested in those illegal transactions. He wasn't a police officer, nor was he Superman. He only cared about finding people. The few of them were familiar with each other's habits. Moreover, they had a unified behavior. If they felt that something was dangerous or even life-threatening, they would carve a mark at a certain place. Each of them had their own unique mark and habits. Even if others knew what they would carve, they might not be able to find it. Zheng Tan watched as Mao drove the car off the highway and stopped at a deserted place. There were a few brick houses scattered around. Most of them were vegetable fields, and there were also some trees. Mao told Zheng Tan to stay in the car while he got out to confirm. After Mao got out of the car, Zheng Tan leaned against the car window and saw Mao approaching a low brick house. Air Mao stood in front of the house and gestured with his hands. He didn't know how to do it, but he spread his fingers and pointed his palms down. Air Mao turned his palms horizontally to the east, then turned his palms towards the south. Air Mao ran towards the direction his thumbs pointed. He saw a tree that wasn't tall and looked at a branch. Then he returned to the car and drove to the next place. Next, they went to 3 more places and repeated the same action. 3 times, Air Mao returned disappointed. It seemed that senior brother Walnut was not at these places. When they arrived at the 5th location, Zheng Tan was still in the car, looking out at Air Mao looking for the marks left behind by senior brother Walnut. There was a small stream here, and there were no green-tiled houses nearby. Further away, there was a large field where people could be seen walking. Just as Zheng Tan was thinking about how desolate this place was, she saw Air Mao return after searching a tree. Unlike the previous few times, Air Mao's expression was different this time. There was no disappointment in his eyes. It seemed that this was the place. Air Mao parked the car and got out of the car to ask Zheng Tan to follow. It wasn't convenient to drive in that direction. Black coal, can you smell anything? Air Mao looked at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan sniffed and didn't seem to smell anything. There were a lot of other people's scents, including those of other animals. It was too disruptive, or it had been too long. The scents had dissipated, and it wasn't easy to smell. If they wanted to search for it, they would have to expand their sniffing range. However, Air Mao seemed to be in a hurry and had a target in mind. It did not seem to rely on Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan only sniffed at the same spot and followed Air Mao. Zheng Tan didn't think that one day he would be used as a tracking dog. In terms of skill, he couldn't compare to those trained dogs. Even if you had a good sense of smell, if you didn't know how to make good use of it, it was useless. Air Mao wasn't too disappointed with Zheng Tan's performance. It was still looking for the marks left by Walnut. It would be faster to track him. He brought the black cat with him as an extra layer of insurance. Although the marks left by Walnut looked like simple marks, they contained a lot of information. Zheng Tan looked at a few of them out of curiosity. He found that the marks looked like the side of a person, which was the left part of Walnut's surname, he. Moreover, every mark was different. It wasn't written directly, nor was it a simple direction. Perhaps only Air Mao and the others could find the correct information from these marks. Seeing Air Mao's outstretched hand gestures, Zheng Tan knew that it was more complicated than he thought. Zheng Tan followed Air Mao not far behind. He didn't need to do anything now. He just needed to keep up. Air Mao had said that it might not ask him for help, so Zheng Tan didn't feel much pressure. However, he sincerely hoped that He Tao and He Jin were safe. Although they weren't familiar with each other and had only met a few times, because of Celestine and Air Mao's relationship, Zheng Tan hoped that everything would go well for Walnut. As he was thinking, Zheng Tan's footsteps paused. He raised his head and sniffed. He looked in a direction that was slightly off from Air Mao's route. Zheng Tan thought about it and ran in that direction. As the smell got stronger, Zheng Tan saw a black bug crawling by his feet. Looking forward, there were even more bugs crawling on the ground. If it wasn't for the dried leaves blocking the way, he might have seen more. Air Mao, who was following the mark, noticed the situation at Zheng Tan's side. It turned around and jogged over. "What's wrong?" Air Mao asked. Zheng Tan ignored him and continued walking until she came to the side of a dried-up ditch. It looked like it had been used as a canal in the past. There were more trees around, and most of them were deciduous. Someone had swept the leaves from the ground into this ditch, so the leaves were piled up slightly thicker. If not, the place Zheng Tan had just walked through would have more leaves. And the place where there were more bugs seemed to be slightly more protruding than the other places. Now, Zheng Tan and Air Mao's attention wasn't on the leaves, but on the bugs. Why are the bugs so active in this weather? Air Mao frowned. He also smelled something unpleasant. Zheng Tan watched Air Mao walk towards the ditch. He stayed on the side and watched. He didn't want to get too close. Those bugs were the same as the ones he had seen in the villa that He Jin had treated as evidence. Thinking about the words he had heard at that time, Zheng Tan felt a chill down his spine. He was very nervous. What was under those leaves? Air Mao had already used a branch to push the leaves aside and saw the object under the leaves. It was a body that had been gnawed to the point where only the skeleton was left. But what made Mao feel a little relieved was that this person was shorter than Walnut Sr. Zheng Tan glanced over and didn't look again. Based on Mao's expression, this wasn't Walnut Sr. He was relieved. But it was just as those people had said. Only the skeleton was left. It seemed that the bugs had gnawed on it. Forcing himself to divert his attention, Zheng Tan walked around and smelled the scent of Walnut Sr. and He Jin. He had been too nervous just now and had paid attention to the bugs and the smell of the ditch. He had missed the tracks of the man and dog. Although Mao could find the general route left by Walnut Sr., this place wasn't on that general route. Zheng Tan tried to identify the smell and followed it to the back of a big tree. There was a slope here. If the light wasn't good, it wouldn't be easy to notice someone lying here. It seemed that Walnut Sr. and He Jin had stayed here for a long time. The smell they had left behind was more obvious. Guessing that when those people were dealing with the ditch, Walnut Sr. and He Jin should have been here to watch. Walnut Sr. only continued to follow after those people left. Mao finished looking over there and took a few photos. Then he covered the leaves again and followed Zheng Tan. After seeing the situation here, he could guess what had happened. Good job, Black Coal. After confirming that Zheng Tan hadn't found any other clues, Mao continued to look for the markings. After searching along the road for a while, Mao stopped. The markings stopped here. The last mark didn't tell Mao where to go next, nor did it indicate a stop. Could it be that time was too tight and the incident happened so suddenly that Walnut Sr. didn't have time to leave a mark? Mao didn't know. He looked around carefully. There were traces of people staying here. He even found some footprints. There were at least 3 people. There were also some cigarette butts. Those people had smoked here. Mao's gaze fell on the narrow cement road about 10 meters away. Those people had probably driven away. But which way should he go? The information Mao had obtained pointed to a few locations. There was one nearby, but on the other side of the road, there was another place further away. Could it be that he was going to investigate both places? Mao stood there and thought. He was about to let the cat behind him try, but when he turned around he realized that the cat had gone in another direction. After Zheng Tan knew that Mao couldn't find the markings, he tried to sniff around. Other than the strange scents, there was also Walnut Sr.'s and He Jin's scents, which weren't easy to detect. He Jin's scent was more obvious. When Zheng Tan was looking for the scent, he found something unexpected and stopped there for a while. There's something? Mao asked. At the same time, he took out his folding knife and squatted down to dig the soil. With the skeleton that was almost gnawed away, Mao would think about what had happened here when he saw the cat pause. He also found that there were traces of the soil being moved. Although the area wasn't big, it could be seen. Zheng Tan took a few steps back. After thinking for a while, he took 2 more steps back. Then he squatted there and watched Mao dig. If Zheng Tan could express himself clearly, Mao wouldn't have to waste time digging. He would definitely stop it. However, Zheng Tan couldn't speak and didn't know how to express himself. Even if Zheng Tan tried to stop it, Mao would definitely do it. The soil wasn't tightly buried. Mao could easily pick up the soil above. After a few quick digging, Mao saw what was buried below. A piece of shit. Mao was speechless. Was it He Jin's poop? Chapter 224. Mao wasn't sure if the poop belonged to a human or a dog. Even if it was a dog, it might not be He Jin. He was just guessing that it might be He Jin. Zheng Tan was very sure that it was He Jin's poop, but he didn't understand why cats had the habit of burying their poop, especially those in the wild. He had heard people say that it seemed to be a cat's instinct, except for Zheng Tan himself. There were many speculations about this behavior. One was that cats, as an independent hunting animal, would try to hide their tracks as much as possible. Even though they had been brought into human society, they still maintained their wild habits and instincts. As a dog, it would normally leave after pooping. Why would it bother to bury its poop? Was this also one of He Jin's training programs? How hard must it be for the trainer to train it? Zheng Tan was thinking. His ears twitched and he looked in a direction. He then jumped on a tree nearby and climbed higher to look in that direction. 100 meters away, A pair of dog ears peeked out from behind a dense shrub that didn't have any leaves. It was unknown what kind of tree it was. The small bush was surrounded by many withered and yellow plants, and the dense withered grass beside it had been burned. Therefore, Heijin's figure was not obvious among the yellow and black withered grass. If it was a human eye, it would not be easy to notice him. At that moment, the pair of dog ears were moving, paying attention to the situation. It seemed that it had noticed Mao's movement and was cautiously moving in this direction. No wonder it was a professional, Zheng Tan thought. Mao noticed Zheng Tan's reaction and immediately became alert. It was about to hide when it suddenly paused and looked at the cat on the tree. The cat didn't look like it had seen a stranger or something very threatening. Instead, it looked like it had seen a familiar person or thing. Could it be? Although it felt that there was no threat, Mao still acted cautiously. It hid and looked in the direction Zheng Tan was heading. Soon, Mao found Heijin. However, Heijin looked at Mao hesitantly. After all, it wasn't easy for it to accept strangers. Even though it had seen Mao a few times, it still couldn't get close to it. Walnut's senior apprentice brother had also spent a few months gradually getting closer to Heijin. Seeing Heijin, Mao was very happy. Unfortunately, Heijin couldn't speak. Mao asked a few questions, but Heijin didn't have much of a reaction. However, when Mao asked about senior brother Walnut, Heijin heard a familiar name and reacted slightly. He then looked in a certain direction. Looking along the cement road, he couldn't see the end. There wasn't even a car in sight. But Mao could tell from Black Gold's reaction where those people and Walnut had gone. It seemed that Walnut had no choice but to leave first. He couldn't take Black Gold with him, so he had Black Gold wait here. After connecting the dots with the new messages he had received, Mao guessed a place and decided to drive over to take a look. Mao asked Zheng Tan and Heijin to wait here while he drove the car over. It was not too far from where he parked his car. He could already draw a rough route in his mind. Zheng Tan was too lazy to walk. He was happy to wait here. After Mao left, Zheng Tan lay on the tree and looked at the road. He estimated the time and wondered when Mao would come back. If Mao got lost, would he have to experience the life of a vagrant again? Just thinking about it made him feel bitter. Zheng Tan's beard trembled. He wasn't willing to be a vagrant. Plus, he was hungry. What food could there be around? Field mice? After all, it wasn't a real cat. Zheng Tan wanted to finish his business and go back as soon as possible. He looked down at Heijin, who was nestled in the grass. Even though most of the grass here was yellow, Heijin would still choose a place with grass or trees. It was good for concealment and wouldn't stay in a place with a wide view for too long. Even if it was burying its poop, it would choose a more secluded place. Perhaps it wasn't good enough, but for a dog, it was already very good. If Walnut's senior apprentice brother didn't come back, or if Heijin didn't meet them, would this dog keep waiting here? Zheng Tan thought it was very likely. After about half an hour, Mao drove over. He got out of the car and opened the back door, motioning for Heijin to get in. However, Heijin just stood there and looked at Mao without moving. Zheng Tan jumped into the car. At the same time, he found the food that Mao put in the car. He also had his own food. If he wanted to work, he had to fill his stomach first. He didn't know if Mao's work was successful. Heijin looked at Zheng Tan, who was lying in the car seat and eating. It tilted its head and looked confused, but it still jumped into the car. Zheng Tan thought that the dog got in the car because of the food. However, Heijin didn't touch Zheng Tan's food after getting in the car. Even if Zheng Tan was merciful and put the food in front of its mouth, it still wouldn't eat. When Heijin was at Walnut's senior apprentice brother's place, it only ate the food that Walnut's senior apprentice brother fed it. It didn't eat the food that other people fed it. Walnut's senior apprentice brother's wife and children are still getting used to this dog. It's rare for them to be close, but they haven't been able to feed it yet, Mao said after seeing the situation from the rearview mirror. Zheng Tan looked at the dog next to him. It was almost drooling because of the smell of the food. He thought that the dog must be very hungry, but it still didn't eat. He was impressed. If it was Sahara, that dog would have run away with the food in its mouth. After driving for about an hour, Zheng Tan took a nap. When he woke up, he looked out the window and saw the mountains not far away. There were many mountains here. Mao wanted to go to a mountain. It wasn't easy to drive there, so he didn't ask the residents at the foot of the mountain to look after it. He found a place to park his car. The car was modified, so Mao wasn't afraid of being stolen. Even if it was stolen, it was nothing compared to Walnut's senior apprentice brother. Jin got out of the car and followed Mao for a while. Then, it began to sniff around. Apparently, it found a familiar smell. It wasn't necessarily Walnut's senior apprentice brothers, but there were other people. Mao saw a mark left on a tree and felt more at ease. Like before, it followed the mark and moved forward. Jin was a little ahead of Mao. Mao followed the mark and compared it to Jin's route. As for Zheng Tan, everything was taken care of by Jin and Jin. As an amateur, he just needed to follow them. It was winter, so many trees on the mountain had withered leaves. However, there were some evergreen trees, so they didn't look so bare. Zheng Tan was still in the mood to look around as he followed Mao up the mountain. After walking for a while, Mao suddenly stopped and called out to Jin. It didn't let Jin go any further. There was a mark that wasn't very obvious. It was this mark that told Mao that there might be surveillance equipment in front of them. Mao took out his phone and found that there was no signal. If there were surveillance equipment in front of them, it would be fine if he was alone. However, the cat and the dog might be exposed. After thinking for a while, Mao told Jin and Zheng Tan to stay where they were and not run forward. Mao explained for a long time, but he didn't know how much Jin understood and how much Jin understood. However, after Mao took a few steps forward, it turned around and found that Jin had already run to some bushes to hide. It seemed that Jin had understood some of Mao's words. No matter how much Jin understood, Mao was fine with it as long as Jin didn't follow them. Zheng Tan jumped onto a tree with green leaves. He felt that it was safer on a tree. In this season, there weren't many bugs and snakes. Zheng Tan didn't have to worry about them at all. After Mao left, Zheng Tan stayed on the tree. The surroundings were very quiet. Jin didn't make any loud noises. The birds were chirping very clearly, which made the place feel desolate. There wasn't any human life. Zheng Tan lay on the tree branch. Jin was guarding below anyway. Even if someone came, they wouldn't pay attention to a cat hiding in a tree. Zheng Tan was much safer than Jin. Suddenly, Zheng Tan's ears twitched. He opened his eyes and looked in a direction. Jin, who was hiding behind the bushes, also heard the noise. However, it still stayed where it was quietly. Zheng Tan stood higher, so he could see more clearly than Jin. It was a field mouse. It was winter, so it probably came out to look for food because it didn't have enough food. Zheng Tan didn't eat field mice, and he wasn't in the mood to catch them. Therefore, he pretended that he didn't see anything and let the field mouse go. However, seeing that the field mouse was gradually moving towards them, Zhang Zian realized that it was quite brave. It probably didn't see many natural predators around, but when it got closer, it probably smelled something. It stopped and looked around carefully. Zheng Tan saw Jin jump out from the bushes and rush towards the field mouse. Looking at the way it caught the field mouse, Zheng Tan felt that it was definitely not the dog's first time catching mice. It probably caught mice at home before. The field mouse couldn't escape from Jin's claws. Zheng Tan only heard the field mouse squeak twice before it stopped. When he looked again, Jin had already returned with the field mouse in its mouth. It was lying in the dry grass and eating. When it was eating, it stopped and looked around vigilantly. It raised its ears and listened carefully. When it was sure that no one was around, it continued to eat. Hearing the sound of Jin nibbling on the field mouse, Zheng Tan felt that this dog was really talented. Or rather, this dog's previous trainer was really talented. However, at the same time, it could be seen that this dog had lived a hard life. It should have carried out missions with soldiers. He heard Celestine say that sometimes when there was no food on a mission, they had to gather materials from the ground. As for what materials they gathered, there were many types, including field mice, snakes, and other animals. He really should let some dogs that like to spoil food come and take a look. When Zheng Tan was at the pet center, he saw several times that some dogs licked the dog food and let out 2 grains. After eating, the dog food on the ground would be directly swept away by the staff. The dog owners didn't think much of it, and Jing Tan didn't think much of it at that time. But now, he suddenly felt that it was better to be frugal. After eating, He Jin went back to the bushes. Jing Tan looked and didn't see much blood on He Jin's body. It was licking the blood around its mouth, and it would be licked away soon. Jing Tan didn't know when Air Mao and Walnut would finish their work. He lay on the tree and thought. Fortunately, he ate some food in the car before he came, so he wasn't hungry now. But if he stayed like this for a few more days, Jing Tan didn't know if he would eat field mice like He Jin. As he was thinking, Jing Tan's heart skipped a beat. He looked in the direction of the mountain. Someone was coming. Not an animal but a human. He Jin obviously heard it too. It stopped licking its mouth and paid attention to the direction of the sound. Soon, Jing Tan saw the people coming. They were two strangers with a little accent. They didn't seem like locals. When Jing Tan came, he heard two locals chatting, and their accent was different from the two people. The route that the two people took was still some distance from where Jing Tan was. When the two people went down the mountain, one of them was still talking with a walkie-talkie. Listening to their conversation, Jing Tan learned that there was a foothold near the foot of the mountain. The two people were going there. Jing Tan thought about it, climbed down the tree, and quietly followed them. He Jin, who was hiding behind the bushes, was puzzled. Chapter 225. Jing Tan was following the two men not far away. He twitched his ears and looked back. He noticed that He Jin was following behind him, but he did not follow him immediately. Instead, he kept a distance. Dogs were not as convenient as cats in terms of body size and agility. It was good to keep a distance from the two men. If He Jin only followed Jing Tan, he would not lose sight of him. When the two of them were talking, they would also look around. When they didn't find anyone, they felt much more at ease. However, they did not know that sometimes, it was not only humans that were following them. There were animals as well. Perhaps they thought that it was impossible for any dangerous animals to appear in the middle of the day in winter. In any case, Jing Tan's tailing was very successful. She followed the two men to a two-story tile-roofed house near the foot of the mountain. From the outside, the house was crudely built, and there was nothing beautiful about it. There were other people in the house. When the two men knocked on the door, it was opened from the inside. When Jing Tan got closer, he hid in a corner and observed. He noticed that there were cameras in two corners under the eaves. He walked around the house and memorized the positions of the cameras. As for whether there were more hidden cameras, Jing Tan did not know. The house did not look special from the outside. It did not look expensive. Who would have thought that there would be cameras installed in such a shabby house? Jing Tan looked behind him. He Jin was still hiding a certain distance away from him. He did not move forward rashly. The house had good soundproofing. Jing Tan could not hear what the people inside were saying. At most, he could hear some vague sounds, but he could not understand them clearly. Therefore, Jing Tan decided to check out the situation first. He had a feeling that he might be able to find something here. After taking a few steps, Jing Tan turned around and saw that He Jin was about to get up and continue following her. She quickly raised a paw towards where He Jin was hiding with her palm facing that direction. She wanted to wave her hand to signal He Jin to stop, but she suddenly realized that cats were different from humans. Could He Jin understand? He Jin, who was about to get up, saw Jing Tan's action. He tilted his head in confusion. After a few seconds, he lay down again, still staring at Jing Tan's direction. Seeing He Jin lying down, Jing Tan sighed in relief. Now, he finally felt the benefits of working together with an intelligent animal. He did not need to do too many actions to explain. Besides, there was a language barrier, so even if he could explain, it would probably be useless. It was still a matter of understanding. After taking a few more steps, Jing Tan quickly glanced behind him. Seeing that He Jin was not following him, he chose an angle where the camera couldn't capture him. The wall outside was not painted much, and there were no tiles or anything like that. Jing Tan had climbed this kind of wall before, so this was nothing to him now. He nimbly jumped up from the wall. There were 3 places where he could avoid the camera, and the reason why Jing Tan chose this one was because it was facing the mountain. Because of this place would not be noticed. The 2 cameras installed at the corners could only focus on the distance, but not the situation below. The most important reason was that there was a broken window on this side. Perhaps those people felt that this window was not important, or perhaps they felt that it was fine to install this window, so they did not replace the glass. Instead, they used a piece of cardboard to block the window. At least, it could act as a shield against the wind. Pushing away the cardboard that blocked the hole, Zheng Tan walked through it. The room was filled with boxes of goods. Zheng Tan looked at the words and pictures printed on the cardboard boxes. XX brand sandwiches, XX brand milk tea, etc. They were all the same brand. Zheng Tan had never heard of this name before, so it should not be a legitimate manufacturer. It should be a counterfeit. The logo was very similar to a famous food brand, just missing a stroke. What made Zheng Tan even more amused was that there was an exemption sign printed on it. However, if it was just a counterfeit, there was no need to make such a scene. Walnut Sr. would not take the risk because of this. The cardboard boxes were all sealed with tape. Only the boxes near the door were not sealed. Zheng Tan jumped up to take a look. Just by looking at the packaging, he knew that it was a shoddy product. The door of this room was also locked. Zheng Tan could not open it because there was a metal lock on the outside. If no one came to open the door, Zheng Tan would not be able to leave through this door. Looking around the room, Zheng Tan found a gap in the corner of the ceiling. Zheng Tan jumped onto the boxes. The boxes were piled up a little high, only 70 or 80 centimeters away from the ceiling. Zheng Tan stood on top, just enough to carefully observe the gap. Zheng Tan looked and found that there were bite marks on the edge of the gap. It was probably chewed by rats. However, this gap could only allow rats to enter. Zheng Tan could not squeeze in. The ceiling was made of wooden planks, the kind that were relatively cheap. After a long time, some of the planks had obvious gaps between them. Through the gaps, many black stains could be seen. At this moment, the wind outside was a little strong. Zheng Tan could feel the stale air blowing in from these gaps. Zheng Tan stood on the edge of the cardboard boxes piled on the top. He gently jumped up and hooked onto the gap. The wooden planks made a creaking sound. This sound was not much and could only be heard in this room. Moreover, when the wind outside blew hard, the ceiling would also make some noise. Therefore, even if someone heard the sound of the wooden planks made by Zheng Tan, they would not care. Hooking onto the wooden planks, Zheng Tan used a hand to push the wooden planks next to him. Unexpectedly, he did not know if it was too old or if it had been pushed open when he was piling up goods in the past, but Zheng Tan used a little force to push it open. Carefully pushing up the loose wooden planks next to him, Zheng Tan made sure that the gap was enough for him to squeeze in. Only then did he retract his claws and tightly grab onto the gap and gap. Then, he used his head to push against the loose wooden planks next to him and squeezed up with some difficulty. The wooden planks made a "ka" sound, but Zheng Tan listened carefully. There was no other movement outside, so he continued to squeeze up. While squeezing, Zheng Tan looked around. Other than a few small insect corpses that had been dead for who knows how long, there was thick dust and cobwebs. After squeezing up, Zheng Tan carefully let the wooden planks return to their original positions without making any loud noises. Only then did he try to walk on the wooden planks. The material of the wooden planks was not very good. Coupled with the fact that they were old, they probably could not withstand the weight of an adult. Even little Pomelo would not be able to stand on them. However, for Zheng Tan this was enough. No matter what, these wooden planks could withstand the weight of a cat. It was relatively dark inside, but the light that came through some cracks in the tiles and the gaps between the wooden planks below was enough for Zheng Tan to see the layout above clearly. Perhaps because it had been built a few times, it felt a little messy. It looked like it was just for show. From here, Zheng Tan could go to the rooms on the second floor to take a look. The rooms above were not completely blocked. Even if there was a gap between a brick, Zheng Tan could try to squeeze through. Some places were directly connected. Compared to these, Zheng Tan was more troubled by the wooden planks under his feet. Although these wooden planks could withstand his weight, sometimes they would make creaking sounds when he stepped on them. If there was someone in a room, even if they did not immediately think that there was an intruder above, they would guess that it was a bird or a mouse and pay special attention when they heard the creaking sound. Zheng Tan carefully stepped on the wooden planks and walked past a few rooms in succession. He did not see anyone. so he guessed that they were all on the first floor. However, when he came to the top of a room, Zheng Tan noticed that it was different from the previous rooms. Looking down from a small gap between the wooden planks, Zheng Tan found that there was a person locked in this room. The room was not big, and there was not much junk around, so the object in the middle was particularly conspicuous. In the middle of the room was a chair, and a person was tied to the chair. Looking from above, Zheng Tan could not see the person's face. The more eye-catching thing was the burgundy hair. It was very messy, and the hairstyle could no longer be seen. The person was wearing a green cotton jacket. The jacket was patched, and there were a few holes where the cotton inside could be seen. There was a lot of dust on the jeans and the hiking shoes on the feet. Looking at the pattern, if it was authentic, this person should have some value. Zheng Tan carefully took a few steps forward and looked at it from a different angle. Unfortunately, the person's head was lowered, as if he was sleeping, and he could not see his face clearly. At this time, Zheng Tan heard voices outside. Someone was going upstairs, and they were coming toward this room. After the sound of the door being unlocked, the door was opened. 3 people walked in. Zheng Tan had seen 2 of them before, and the other person should have been in this room for a long time. One of them, who was wearing a gray coat, walked over to the person tied to the chair, grabbed the person's hair, and shook it. Then, Zheng Tan heard a sound that sounded like a pig being slaughtered. "Shut up!" The man in the gray coat slapped him. The person's scream stopped, and then it was followed by crying. It was a 4-syllable cry. The first 3 syllables were rising, and the next 3 syllables were falling. The first and 4th syllables were dragging, and the middle 2 syllables were shorter. Although it was still unpleasant, it was at least much better than the pig's cry. Zheng Tan had always felt that someone who cried like that was either a child, the type that never grew up, or it was more of an act. He had only heard of some of the children in the compound crying like that. This was the first time he had heard of a grown man crying like that. He felt goosebumps all over his body. When the man in the gray coat raised his head, Zheng Tan saw that the man's face was bruised and swollen, and his face was covered in snot and tears. "This is the person you caught?" one of the people who had just come down the mountain asked. "Yes, that's him." The man in the gray coat loosened his grip on the person's hair. The person who asked the question held an ID card in his hand and looked at it. Then, he clicked his tongue. It's obvious that he's from a rich family. His things must be worth a lot of money, right? The man in the gray coat chuckled. The higher-ups only said to lock him up for the time being. They didn't say to not sell anything. Seeing the person frown, the man in the gray coat added, he only sold a cell phone and a camera. He didn't sell them locally. He had a special channel. He meant to reassure the other party that they would not cause trouble. You've seen the things in his wallet. As for his leather coat, I was wearing it downstairs just now. It's quite warm. Oh, this guy has a lot of good pictures in his cell phone. If they are released, it will probably be another X-rated news. There's nothing in the camera. As for his luxury car, I hid it and didn't deal with it for the time being. When the time comes, I'll sell it and get a sum of money. The frown of the person who asked the question smoothed out a little. Don't let him die yet. He looks like a coward, but he has a good family background. When the time comes, we'll see what the higher-ups want. Recently, things had not been going well. The higher-ups did not seem to want to cause any more trouble. They wanted to settle the matter for the time being. Of course, we know that. It's just that this guy always needs to go to the toilet. Then save some food, the man in the gray coat said. He meant that as long as he did not starve to death, there was no need to give him too much food. The person who was tied up began to cry again. They kept promising to let him go and would give him a lot of money. Unfortunately, the 3 of them ignored him. After asking a few more questions, they left. There was the sound of the lock being jammed outside the door. Zheng Tan pricked up his ears. He heard the 3 of them talking about whether they should move the person to another place. After all, they were going to ship the goods tomorrow. He could not hear what they said after that. The 3 of them had already gone downstairs. Zheng Tan was about to find a place to go down to the first floor to listen in on their conversation. However, when he lifted his foot, he saw through the gap between the wooden boards that the person who was tied to the chair and crying a moment ago had stood up from the chair. He did not know when the ropes tied to him had been cut. They were wrapped into a bundle and stuffed into the pocket of the tattered cotton-padded jacket. After putting on the cotton-padded jacket, the person walked to the corner and picked up the half-steamed bun that had fallen there. It was the breakfast that he had not finished in the morning. Chapter 226. He really was faking it. Zheng Tan looked at the people below through the cracks in the wooden boards. When the three people came in, Zheng Tan thought that the person who was tied up was an immature rich second generation with a childish temper. Coupled with the fact that he was crying and snot after being beaten up, anyone would think that he was a good-for-nothing wastrel. Not everyone could cry to such an effect. Comparing the huge contrast before and after, Zheng Tan felt that this person could simply win an Academy Award. Moreover, it would be fine if he only had acting skills, but he really didn't think that this person could hide it so well. The rope that was tied up had been easily untied when Zheng Tan wasn't paying attention. This wasn't something that an ordinary person could do. At the same time, if he could untie the rope so quickly, how could he be beaten black and blue and put himself in such a difficult situation? Either he was a ruthless person, or he was a lunatic. Zheng Tan stared at the person below. The person below was chewing the steamed bun in his hand while staring at Zheng Tan. "Who are you?" the person asked. "Maybe we can cooperate. I have no interest in that batch of goods. If you want it, I can give it to you." Zheng Tan didn't know what the person was talking about. This word definitely wasn't referring to the batch of inferior food that Zheng Tan had seen. However, he could also guess that Walnut Senior's goal was probably that so-called goods. Then, if this person wasn't here for the goods, why was he here? Seeing that there was no movement or response from above, the person stuffed the last bit of steamed bun into his mouth. He wiped his hands on his green cotton shirt, then jumped onto the table on the side and pushed at the wooden ceiling. Zheng Tan quickly left the place when he moved. He left the area of the room and hid behind a log, listening to the movement over there. The person didn't seem to have any intention of pushing the wooden ceiling open to leave. After a while, Zheng Tan heard the sound of a door lock. Looking down from the slit, he saw that the person's door had been opened a crack. This was the biggest crack that could be opened before the door was unlocked. The man stretched out 2 fingers, holding something between them, towards the keyhole of the lock. After seeing Air Mao pick locks, Zheng Tan wasn't surprised to see this person's behavior. In this world, there were still many capable people. A few seconds later, the man unlocked the door and came out of the room. He looked around and then searched the surrounding rooms one by one. Zheng Tan didn't know what he was looking for. He was curious, so he followed him from above. Zheng Tan did not follow too closely. He was still mostly on guard against that person. With that kind of skill, he should not be worse than Air Mao. This person hid deeper than Air Mao, so Zheng Tan had to be on guard. After looking through a few rooms, the man entered the room with the goods. The lock was a piece of cake for him. Zheng Tan saw the man rummaging through the open boxes. Then he opened a box sealed with tape and rummaged through it again. He took out a bag of XX milk tea, tore open a small opening, sniffed it, and then dipped it in his mouth and tasted it. Zheng Tan looked at the man's actions and guessed that there was something else inside. And that the inferior food was just a cover for these things? As for the thing that the man was holding, could it be some kind of illegal drug? If that was the case, then the place on the mountain was probably responsible for the production. No wonder Walnut wanted to take the risk. The man changed his angle so that his back was facing Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan could not see what the man was doing. After about a minute, the man looked up at Zheng Tan and asked in a low voice, as if he was talking to himself, "What are you?" When he pushed the wooden ceiling, he found that the wooden ceiling was weak. It could not withstand the weight of an adult human. Furthermore, the man was able to move freely on it. It did not seem like something a human could do. After the man looked for something, he did not stay for long and went downstairs. Zheng Tan waited for a while. When he did not hear any movement downstairs, he lifted the wooden ceiling and went downstairs carefully. Even though she didn't hear anything earlier, when she went downstairs, Zheng Tan saw a person lying on the ground. He was still breathing, but his hands were tied up. The rope used to tie him up was the same one used to tie up the red-haired man. Looking around, Zheng Tan walked over to take a look at the rooms. Other than a few bedrooms, a kitchen, and a toilet, There was only the surveillance room on the first floor. There was a person lying in the bedroom. He was also tied up there and had lost his senses. As for the surveillance room, the man in the gray coat was lying on the ground. The three of them had one thing in common. Their faces were beaten very badly. As for whether they had been beaten up in other places, Zheng Tan could not tell. The red-haired man was fiddling with a USB drive in the surveillance room. Soon, the man pulled out the USB drive and walked out. He took out an earpiece from somewhere and listened to something. Then, he frowned and looked up at the mountain. He walked faster. At this moment, the man had put on his leather coat and was about to leave. However, after taking a few steps, the man suddenly stopped and pulled out a dagger. It was the dagger that he had picked up in the house. Zheng Tan was looking outside from a window on the first floor. When he realized that something was wrong, he immediately ran out. A shadow rushed at the red-haired man from the side. The red-haired man was about to swing his knife, but another shadow rushed out and blocked him. He Jin was forced to stop. He looked at Zheng Tan in confusion. He did not understand why the cat was blocking him. The red-haired man looked at the black cat in the middle and maintained his previous posture. After a few seconds, he put away the dagger and raised his eyebrows. "You're the one on the wooden floor?" Zheng Tan pulled his ears and stared at the man. He had no doubt that if He Jin had really jumped up, he would have been killed by the dagger. However, He Jin was still growling behind him. It seemed that he was unwilling to give up and wanted to jump up again. Zheng Tan wanted to turn around and slap He Jin to make him behave, but he did not dare to move his eyes away from the man in front of him. He could tell that the man was skilled from how he had taken down the people in the room without making a sound. He did not kill anyone because he did not want to get involved in a lawsuit. However, not killing people did not mean that he would not kill dogs and cats. The man did want to kill He Jin. However, Zheng Tan did not feel any killing intent from the man's eyes. He was more curious and sizing him up. The man stared at Zheng Tan for a while. Then he played with the dagger in his hand, put it away, and left. After the man left, Zheng Tan breathed a sigh of relief. Zheng Tan listened to the surroundings. He did not sense anyone approaching, so he walked back into the room. He Jin hesitated for a while before following him. To him, most of the time, he would just follow orders. It was rare to see someone like this black cat who always did things its own way. However, He Jin did not have a better choice, so he might as well follow Zhang Heng. When Zheng Tan came out of the room, he saw that the cameras could be turned off. As for the people in the room, Zheng Tan did not know when they would wake up. It would be troublesome if they woke up now, so he had to do something. After looking at them one by one, Zheng Tan grabbed the pants of the man who had fallen down the stairs and dragged him to the room. There was a bedroom there, and there was another person lying in there. Zheng Tan decided to leave them there and lock the door. Even if they woke up, they would not be able to come out for a while. He Jin saw this and bit the pants of the other man in the room. He followed Zheng Tan and dragged him to the room. Seeing that one of them was about to wake up, Zheng Tan looked around and grabbed a wooden chair next to him and knocked on it. The person who was about to open his eyes fainted again. Zheng Tan searched the three of them and took out a bunch of keys. She found the lock and locked the door. He Jin was squatting at the side, watching the black cat jumping up and down. He did not understand what the cat was doing, but he felt that the cat was doing the right thing. He Jin moved his ears and looked in a direction. After the door was locked, Zheng Tan looked at the door as well. They did not close the door when they came in, so He Jin was closer to the door than Zheng Tan was, so he could sense the movement outside. The wind blew in, and He Jin smelled the scent of the people outside. Woof! He Jin barked. When Zheng Tan saw He Jin wagging his tail, his nervousness dissipated. As expected, after He Jin barked, a head popped in from the door. It was Mao. F***CK. Why are the two of you here? Mao came down the mountain from another route, so he did not pass by the place where He Jin was waiting. Therefore, he did not know that He Jin and Zheng Tan were no longer there. When he heard the noise from outside, he was wondering how many people were inside, especially when he heard the dong sound. He was wondering if they were interrogating some unlucky person, but he did not expect it to be the two of them. He Jin was in a good mood when he saw Mao wagging his tail vigorously. He looked behind Mao, but did not see the person he was looking for. Senior is still on the mountain, and there is still a mission. We just have to wait here, and the reinforcements will be here soon. Air Mao patted He Jin's head. This time, He Jin did not avoid it. Hearing Air Mao's words, Jing Tan stretched his body. He was so tense that he could finally relax. Air Mao pried open the lock and looked at the 3 people who had been locked up by Jing Tan. The ropes had been tied up professionally, and the wounds on their bodies were obvious. It was impossible for a cat and a dog to cause such damage. Where are the others? Air Mao asked. He Jin looked out of the door and then back at Air Mao. They left? Then forget it. Air Mao checked the surveillance cameras around, turned on the door again, and closed it. The reinforcements that Air Mao mentioned arrived soon. They were all fully armed, and it was very nerve-wracking to look at. Zheng Tan only saw a portion of them, and the rest were cooperating with the people on the mountain. Since there were people to deal with it, Air Mao did not stay in one place, and went upstairs and downstairs. When he saw Air Mao rummaging through the bags of low-quality food, Zheng Tan was sure that he had guessed correctly. These people were indeed manufacturing some illegal drugs on the mountain, and at the same time, producing some low-quality food. They put the drugs in similar bags, and then shipped them out with the food to be sold to buyers. The bags looked almost the same, and the only difference was the barcode. If one did not look closely, one would not be able to tell. In one of the rooms, they found the bugs, and they were locked in big, sturdy boxes. No wonder the red-haired man did not touch the boxes when he was looking at them from above. He obviously knew that the bugs were inside. Zheng Tan thought. Air Mao said that it was a type of beetle that was brought in from abroad. It was probably mutated by humans. They did not have reproductive abilities, but their appetite was very big. A box of bugs like this could gnaw an adult into a skeleton in less than half a day. However, it was said that this was not the final product. It was just a little toy that the other party gave to this group of people during the transaction. Zheng Tan heard the gunshots coming from the mountain and found a hidden place to lie down. The matter was not over yet, and he did not want to encounter any accidents. On the other hand, He Jin was very excited. It was very familiar with the sound of gunshots, and when it heard the gunshots, it would think of its previous mission. When it was over, it was close to evening. Walnut's arm was injured, and he looked a little tired, but his eyes were bright, and he was in the mood to joke with Air Mao. Listening to their conversation, Zheng Tan knew that the boss, who had a criminal background, was involved in drugs, and who knew how many murders he had committed, had been arrested. The follow-up investigation and arrest were still in progress. However, Walnut Sr. was already very satisfied to have caught such a big fish. There was only one thing that made him unhappy. They said that the rich second generation who went up the mountain to catch squirrels in the middle of winter was not seen. I think that this is probably someone who hides deeply, but I don't know who he is. If he is an enemy of this gang, then it's fine. After all, this gang's companies on the surface and their secret dealings are an eyesore to some people, Walnut said. On the surface, this group of people's companies had gone bankrupt because of the commercial war, but the majority of their business was still secret dealings. As long as this business existed, they would have a chance to make a comeback. However, more people did not want them to make a comeback. Perhaps, the one who pretended to be a rich second generation belonged to this category? I think that this person is not necessarily an enemy or an ally of this gang. If he was an enemy, the 3 people in the room would have died long ago. There would not be any left alive, Air Mao said. At the same time, on a certain highway in a luxury car, a person with wine-red hair was wearing a headset and talking to someone. When the group of people on the mountain searched the car, they did not find the other phone hidden in the car. Have you received the information? But you don't have to waste your time now. They are probably already in the hands of the police, and there is basically no possibility of them getting up again. Of course, although you don't have to do anything, you have to honor the money you promised me. This time, in order to find evidence, I was almost disfigured. That can't be helped. Being beaten up is better than being fed to the bugs. As for the lethality of those bugs, think about the commercial spy who was already gnawed into bones. Hee, happy working with you. Next time, remember to visit me if you need anything. After ending the call, after a while, A remittance message appeared on the phone. He glanced at it and smiled. Listening to the blues music in the car, he held the steering wheel with one hand and tapped the fingers of the other hand to the beat of the music. Chapter 227. When Zheng Tan returned home, Jiao Ma scolded Air Mao. He had suddenly taken the cat away for 2 days and hadn't even called to tell her that he was safe. This made Jiao Ma worried that Air Mao had taken her cat to a bad place. Air Mao stood there obediently to be lectured, constantly admitting its mistakes. Seeing Air Mao's sincere attitude and the fact that there was nothing wrong with her cat, Jiao Ma left after a few words. Walnut really wanted to thank the Jiao family. In his opinion, Zheng Tan and the Jiao family were bound together. If he couldn't repay the cat, he could repay the Jiao family. But now wasn't a good time to tell the truth. Maybe later, Walnut thought. The case was going smoothly and there was hope for a promotion. But what made Walnut unsatisfied was that there was still no news about the rich kid who caught the squirrel. The so-called car turned out to be rented and the ID was fake. In this day and age, the difference between an ID photo and a real person was so big that you wouldn't be able to recognize them even if they were standing right in front of you. He had checked all the rich kids in the area and there was no such person. Those who had seen the fake rich second-generation heir couldn't even remember what he looked like. What left a deeper impression was the embarrassing scene of him crying after being beaten black and blue. Zheng Tan and Black Gold had seen him, but Walnut knew that he couldn't let them tell him anything unless the fake rich kid appeared again. Black Gold would definitely recognize him. Last time, Air Mao had no choice but to give black rice to the pet center. But this time, when Air Mao sent black rice over, he emphasized to the people there that peanut candy was not allowed to get close. Otherwise, he would complain to the pet center. Actually, Air Mao also wanted to move to another place. There were many places in Chuhua City where he could help look after pets, but black rice didn't buy it. It wouldn't go anywhere else at all. Once it went there, it would keep barking. Air Mao's heart ached when he heard that. After walking around, it was still sent to the pet center. Since this VIP customer had said so, the people at the pet center naturally did as they were told. Therefore, when it went to collect the black rice, it heard the people at the pet center promise not to let any male cats near it. This made Air Mao quite satisfied. However, after he brought black rice home, black rice ignored him again for 3 days. Every time black rice was sent to the pet center, Air Mao would always receive the same cold treatment. As for Zheng Tan, he had been doing well recently. Every time he experienced those unpleasant things, he would always sigh with emotion at how peaceful and beautiful life in the courtyard was. The weather was getting colder and colder. At the end of the year was approaching. The students had already gone home after the final exams. Those who were in school were also packing up and would be leaving soon. Therefore, the main roads and many places that were usually lively on campus were now much quieter. To Zheng Tan, this was a good thing. With no one around, he could play more freely. Recently, Zheng Tan would drive his little pushcart out to play every day. In the past, because the Jiao family only had Jiao Ma and 2 children, Zheng Tan couldn't let the 3 of them climb up and down the pushcart every day. The pushcart was much heavier than a normal toy car. Moreover, the Jiao family lived on the 5th floor. It was tiring to move up and down the pushcart. If the Jiao Pa was there, it would be fine, but the women and children were out of the question. Therefore, Zheng Tan usually didn't move the pushcart out except when Fang Xiaokong came to find him to play at Old Lu's place. But now, Zheng Tan could play with the pushcart every day. It adjusted his mood and warmed him up. This matter started last week. Last week, Fang Xiaokong came to Chuhua University to look for Cheng Zhong, the graduate student from the Department of Engineering who had built the pushcart for Zheng Tan. The reason was that after Fang Mengmeng found out that Zheng Tan had a pushcart, she wanted to build one for her family. The third master Fang didn't say anything and asked Cheng Zhong to build another pushcart like Zheng Tan's to please his precious daughter. Therefore, Cheng Zhong was busy building the pushcart. At the same time, he would compare it with Zheng Tan's pushcart, update some parts, and record some parameters. Every day, after Zheng Tan finished playing with the pushcart, he just had to drive to the place where the Jiao Wei and the others played with the pushcart. Now, many of the students who played with the pushcart and airplane models had left. Cheng Zhong had set up a temporary studio there, and 2 local students were learning from Cheng Zhong. Therefore, Zheng Tan didn't have to find someone to move the pushcart back to the Jiao family every day. Cheng Zhong also installed a heating device in the pushcart, and a layer of fluffy cloth was installed in the seat to keep it warm. When Zheng Tan stayed in the pushcart, although his head and most of his torso were still exposed, he didn't feel cold. When Zheng Tan drove the pushcart on the road, some people would laugh a little when they saw it. However, at most, they felt that it was a novelty. Everyone thought that someone had taken out a toy car to play with the cat. Some people even thought that it was a good tool to walk the cat. No one would think that a cat was controlling the pushcart by itself. There were often students who liked to play with machines in school who would build things to run around. Over time, when people saw similar things, they just laughed and didn't think too much about it. The steering wheel was inside, and Zheng Tan's 2 paws were stepping on it. Therefore, in the eyes of the people outside, the cat was just squatting inside. The person controlling the car was probably someone else, and no one would suspect Zheng Tan at all. There wasn't much wind today. In the winter afternoon, the sun was warm and made Zheng Tan feel a lot better. Until, brother Zheng Tan. His good mood was gone just like that. F***ck, why didn't this little brat take a nap at this time? What was he doing out here? Without looking back, Zheng Tan knew that the children's electric pushcart, which was much bigger than his pushcart, had caught up with him. Zheng Tan didn't want to hear the little brat's babbling, so he sped up. Although Zheng Tan's pushcart looked like a toy, it had all the functions. If he really wanted to speed up, it would be much faster than Jiao Ma's electric pushcart. However, Zheng Tan didn't dare to do that in school. At most, when Fang Xiaokong took Zheng Tan to Lao Lu's place, he and Lu Yao would race down the car. Usually, he would drive slowly to adjust his mood. Even if he couldn't speed up the pushcart to the speed that Zheng Tan wanted, it was enough to shake off the children's 4-wheeled car behind him. Brother King, the childish voice was soft and sounded like it was about to cry. It made Zheng Tan want to hit the steering wheel. **ck. This trick every time. With a sigh, Zheng Tan slowed down the pushcart and waited for the children's 4-wheeled car to catch up. Zhuokitten's electric pushcart looked like a cat, and the picture on it was of a cat. From the front, the car's headlights looked like a cat's eyes, and there were whiskers around its mouth. Some of the teachers in the school had bought such cars for their children to play with, but most of the children were around 3 years old, unlike Zhuokitten, who started playing with them when he was less than 2 years old. For safety reasons, Xiao Wan, who was in charge of taking care of Zhuokitten, held the remote control in his hand and didn't let Zhuokitten drive the car. Zhuoxiao the cat seemed to know that he was not in control of the car. He was not like other children who would drive excitedly. He would look directly at Xiao Wan and tell him the direction that he wanted to go. Start, turn or stop. For example, just now, when Zhuokitten wanted to catch up to Zheng Tan, he looked directly at Xiao Wan, who was holding the remote control, and pointed at Zheng Tan in front, indicating that he should hurry up and catch up. After Zheng Tan's pushcart slowed down, Xiao Wan quickly walked up. She didn't seem tired or out of breath. She looked at the man and the cat with a smile. The longer she interacted with him, the more she felt that this cat was special. In fact, when she was choosing the car, she showed Zhuokitten many pictures of cars, but the child wasn't satisfied. He pointed at a picture hanging on the wall. There were many pictures hanging on the wall. Most of them were taken when Zhuokitten was 1 year old. One of them was of him and the black cat together. Zhuokitten wanted a pushcart in the shape of a black cat, but Xiaowan felt that black was too heavy for a child. It would have a bad impact on a child's growth, so she changed it to an orange one. As for the deformed graffiti on the car, they were all drawn by Zhuokitten himself. From the outline of the graffiti, it could be seen that it was in the shape of a cat. Xiaowan was very satisfied with this. After all, he was only a child. Many children of Zhuokitten's age might not be able to hold a pen steadily. When Zhuokitten's car came close, the little kid laughed and waved at Zheng Tan. "Brother Black." What the hell was he calling? Zheng Tan pulled his ears and turned his head slightly to look at Zhuokitten, who was sitting in the car wrapped up like a furry ball. He wanted to go over and give him a few slaps. Running out in the middle of winter, he wasn't afraid of catching a cold. Little Wan followed by his side. Every time little Kitten Zhuo saw the black cat, he would become very talkative. Although his words were not clear and he could not understand what the child was saying most of the time, little one just let him be since the child was talking happily. Zhuokitten's learning ability was very strong. Xiaowan could see that this child's IQ was higher than other children of the same age. As for how much higher, she couldn't say for sure. Zheng Tan pulled his ears and listened to the little brat babble for nearly half an hour. He couldn't understand what the little brat was trying to say. The child could only say a few words clearly, and Zheng Tan's name was one of them. When the child was excited, his words became vague. However, Zheng Tan could feel that Zhuokitten's language ability was improving. At least compared to last time, Zheng Tan could make out 1 or 2 words in a sentence. When Zhuokitten finally got tired of playing and said he was tired, Xiaowan brought him back to rest. It was windy. It wasn't good to stay outside for too long in this weather. If Zhuokitten hadn't made a fuss about coming out, Xiaowan wouldn't have compromised. After Zhuokitten left, Zheng Tan drove the car to the old tile-roofed house and handed it to Cheng Zhong and the others. After that, he decided to go out for a walk. Before the incident with Senior Walnut, he had planned to go there and didn't go out. The weather was good now, and little Pomelo and the others were also on vacation. There was no need to pick them up on time. Jiaoma had been busy marking test papers and doing statistics at school recently, so she came back a little late. Dinner was usually around 6 o'clock, so Zheng Tan could play more. Coming out of one of the side doors, Zheng Tan remembered that this side door was on the same line as the side door in the east courtyard. When he took the bus, he passed by here. It was also marked on the map. After walking for a while, Zheng Tan saw Tsinghua University's affiliated hospital. Jiaoma had been here when she was hospitalized. Zheng Tan didn't plan to go through the hospital's main entrance. He didn't like the atmosphere in the hospital. In his memory, behind the hospital, there was a big courtyard near the inpatient department. The scenery inside was not bad, and there were often people walking around. Zheng Tan didn't plan to stay here for long. The hospital always made him feel depressed. Every time he came here, he would think of Jiaoma's hospitalization. He just decided to go through here. Jumping on the wall of the courtyard was slightly higher than the wall Zheng Tan saw on Old Street. From here, Zheng Tan's field of vision was slightly wider. There were many evergreen trees in the courtyard. This could also reduce the emotions of the patients when they saw the withered leaves. At this time, there weren't many people walking around outside. Zheng Tan didn't pay much attention to it. He planned to walk along the wall. Chapter 228. Zheng Tan had heard too many of such words, especially those that were filled with strong disgust. Zheng Tan paused and looked in the direction of the voice. 2 people were standing beside a tall cedar tree. One of them was about 40 years old and looked like a noblewoman. The other had a head full of white hair and was wearing a light-colored shawl. Her entire person exuded a sense of tranquility and peace. The one who spoke was the middle-aged woman. She supported the old woman next to her and looked at Zheng Tan with undisguised disgust. Zheng Tan found it strange. He didn't provoke this woman, so why did she speak as if she had a grudge against him? However, the old woman next to the middle-aged woman didn't have any disgust in her eyes. Instead, she looked at him with a kind smile. "What's wrong with a black cat?" the old woman said, obviously disagreeing with the words of the person next to her. However, this old woman didn't seem to be in good health. Her voice wasn't loud and was a little soft. Compared to the old women in the courtyard who sang operas without any pressure, this old woman lacked energy. The middle-aged woman's mouth twitched, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't say it directly. She paused and said, "Mom, let's take a walk over there. This place is good. There's no need to change places." The old woman shook her head and patted the hand of the person next to her. "I know you think a black cat is unlucky." The middle-aged woman wanted to explain, but when she opened her mouth, the old woman raised her hand and stopped her. The old woman knew what she wanted to say. Most of the people in the hospital were patients. Some of them were in the recovery period and came out to walk around. Some, like this old lady, sometimes didn't want to stay in the ward all day during the hospitalization period. After getting the doctor's permission, they would come out to walk around. Waiting for her, there might be a surgery, but it hadn't been decided yet. The old woman also felt that the ward was too stuffy today. After talking with the doctor, She let her daughter-in-law help her out to walk for some fresh air. Originally, a wheelchair was arranged, but the old woman didn't sit. Not far behind them was a nurse. She was probably there to prevent any unexpected incidents. Zheng Tan felt that this old woman was quite charming when she smiled, as if it had a magical effect of calming people's impetuous hearts. Zheng Tan's bad mood when he heard the words targeted at him just now disappeared completely. This old lady must have been a beauty when she was young, Zheng Tan thought. In this era, there were many beautiful people. Unfortunately, even if they were once peerlessly beautiful, they could not withstand the pig-slaughtering knife of time. However, time could only take away one's appearance, but it could not take away one's temperament. Everyone would grow old eventually, and it was not easy to stay elegant all the time. Perhaps she was tired from walking. The old lady looked around and walked to the wooden bench by the side of the road, planning to sit there and rest. After seeing the old lady's actions, the nurse behind her quickly stepped forward and placed a soft cushion on the wooden chair. The old lady smiled and thanked the nurse. The young nurse's impression of the old lady immediately improved. The middle-aged woman looked at Zheng Tan and could not help but feel disdainful. She cursed the black cat on the wall 1,000 times in her heart. It couldn't be helped. In the hospital, many people were more particular, and some things were taboo. For example, when it came to fruit, most people would send apples, and very few people would send pears. 2 days ago, the old lady still wanted to eat pears. She spent a lot of effort to persuade the old lady to change it to other fruits. But now, what should she do when she saw a black cat? Many people felt that the black cat was evil, especially at such a time and place. The middle-aged woman felt that it was inauspicious, especially when the cat looked at people. It made her feel uneasy. She originally wanted to chase the cat away, but seeing the old lady like this, it was impossible to chase it away. She wanted to take the old lady somewhere else, but the old lady was sitting down now. What should she do? Although she did not say anything, Zheng Tan could see the strong disgust and rejection in the middle-aged woman's eyes. This made Zheng Tan, who was about to leave, change his mind. Zheng Tan was sometimes like this, stubborn and rebellious. The more you hate me, the more you want me to leave, but I won't. Thus, Zheng Tan squatted on the high wall and stared at the middle-aged woman, proudly wagging the tip of his tail twice. The middle-aged woman was so angry that her face was twitching, but because the old lady was next to her, she had to suppress her anger. If it were any other time, she would have called someone to beat him up. The old lady looked in the direction of Zheng Tan and smiled. I saw a lot of black cats when I was young. At that time, the old people in our village said that black cats are spiritual creatures that can drive away evil spirits. The middle-aged woman was disdainful of this saying. Drive away evil spirits? She thought that the cat itself was evil. You don't believe me, I remember at that time, our village. The old lady looked in the direction of Zheng Tan, but her eyes seemed to be looking through Zheng Tan to recall the things that happened many years ago. The old lady said some things, but the middle-aged woman only listened to a story. The disgust she felt for the cat on the wall did not decrease much. If she was hospitalized, she would definitely not want to see this pure black cat. She would definitely ask someone to chase it away and beat it until it did not dare to come close. It was probably because of Zheng Tan that the old lady was addicted to reminiscing about the past, and she even said some interesting things in her memory. I didn't know that you were so naughty back then, the young nurse next to her joked. Yes, I was also a crazy girl back then. The old lady did not mind revealing her past at all. She sighed and said, People, when I think back to when I was young, I feel that I have changed a lot. Shortcomings, strengths, old habits, new habits. It's just like the construction of a city. Some places have to be torn down, and some places have to be rebuilt. After a few years, you will find that the city has changed a lot. The young nurse did not know what to say at this time. She did not know the old lady, and she was afraid that she would say something wrong and make the old lady sad. For an old person at this age, a small illness could be fatal. Emotions were very important. The middle-aged woman saw that the old lady's words were not right, so she quickly changed the topic. Unexpectedly, the old lady did not want to change the topic at all. She looked at the black cat on the wall and said to the middle-aged woman, I think this cat is quite spiritual. Spiritual my ass. The middle-aged woman cursed silently. The old lady was excited and waved at Xianxia. Hey, black cat on the wall, do you have time to talk to me? What could it know? The middle-aged woman was about to comfort the old lady, but unexpectedly, she caught a glimpse of a black shadow on the wall. When she looked over, she saw that the cat that was originally squatting on the wall had jumped down and was slowly walking towards them. This time, not only the middle-aged woman and the young nurse, but even the old lady was surprised. She was just saying it casually and did not expect the cat to come. Xianxia had a good impression of the old lady, so he decided to give her some face. Also, he wanted to make the middle-aged woman angry. Seeing that Xianxia was really coming, the old lady was happy. She waved and patted the wooden chair next to her, indicating that Xianxia should sit there. The middle-aged woman wanted to say that the cat had a lot of germs, but seeing that the old lady was in a good mood, she did not dare to say anything. Xianxia did not hesitate and jumped onto the bench. Although the middle-aged woman was patient, when Xianxia came over, she could not help but move to the side like avoiding the plague. She did not want to be too close to the cat. See, what did I say? This cat is spiritual, right? The old lady raised her hand and touched Xianxia's head. Xianxia turned his head to avoid her. The old lady did not care. She felt that cats were more vigilant. It was good enough that they could come over. Therefore, the old lady's happiness did not decrease at all. This time, the young nurse found an opportunity and quickly said, "That's true. This cat can drive away evil spirits." She originally wanted to say that the cat could get rid of diseases, but she changed her mind. Otherwise, she would not be able to bear the consequences if something happened. What could she say? Although the middle-aged woman was very repulsed by the cat on the bench, she had to force a smile and say a few words to make the old lady feel better. Xianxia, on the other hand, stood beside the old lady with a smug look on her face. She looked at the middle-aged woman with a provocative look. The middle-aged woman took a deep breath and suppressed the surging anger in her heart. She originally thought that she was overthinking things. How could there be such a gaze in a cat's eye? But the more she looked, the more she felt that it wasn't an illusion caused by her emotions. She immediately clenched her fists. Because she had to take care of the old lady, her long nails had been cut. If not, when she clenched her fists, her nails would have pierced her palms. Xianxia saw the middle-aged woman's small movements and was very disdainful. Although this woman looked like a rich madam, she did not dare to dress up too much when taking care of a patient. Her dressing and facial care showed that she used to be a very popular beauty. But compared to the old lady next to her, Xianxia felt that this middle-aged woman was an old witch. Maybe this was the difference in temperament? Shaking his head, Xianxia squatted down beside the old lady. He could see that the old lady was sick and weak. She was such a kind person. Xianxia hoped that she would be able to recover soon so that she could see more of this rapidly changing city. From the look in her eyes when she looked at him, Xianxia felt that this old lady still had a lot of people and things that she could not let go of. But time waited for no one. The old lady had to go back to the ward. Xianxia was also ready to get up and leave. Before getting up, the old lady raised her hand and was about to touch Xianxia's cat head again. Xianxia reflexively avoided it. A man's head should not be touched. However, thinking about the old lady in front of him, he suddenly felt a little reluctant. Before she withdrew her hand, Xianxia raised his front hand and touched the old lady's palm. "I wish you good health, this unknown old lady." After touching, before the three of them could react, Xianxia climbed over the wall and left. The old lady looked at her palm and smiled. Not far from the old lady, the young nurse looked at the old lady standing there and thought that she really did not have it easy. From black hair to silver hair, her beauty had faded, her steps were staggered, and she was plagued by illness, but she still smiled calmly. The old lady pulled her shawl and said softly, "Prepare for the operation." "Mom, are you sure? You should think about it again. You can't do it because of that cat?" The middle-aged woman was very worried. If she did not choose the operation, she could still live for 3 to 5 years. The operation was too risky. If it was successful, the old lady could see the changes in this city for a few more years. But if it was unsuccessful, she would never see this city again. Chapter 229. It was Zheng Tan's third New Year, and there was nothing special about it. Jiao Ma brought the two children and the cat back to the Jiao family's house for the New Year. She also went to visit Grandpa Gu for a few days. On New Year's Eve, the Jiao Pa called and said that he would be back in the second half of the year if he was fast enough. However, he did not promise anything. No one could be sure when it came to the research project. Zheng Tan's impression of the new year was that there were not many ups and downs. Zheng Tan leaned on the balcony and yawned. He looked into the distance from the balcony on the 5th floor. After school reopened, the school began to rejoice again. It was another year of spring. When the flowers bloomed, some trees began to sprout. This was Zheng Tan's third year here. After getting used to it, he did not have many thoughts. Sometimes, even if he did not want to admit it, he had to compromise with fate. What else could he do? Torture himself for fun? There was no need to be so distressed. Zheng Tan rubbed his chin on the flower pot next to him and rolled around in boredom. He remembered what little Pomelo said when he woke up this morning. Zheng Tan ran into the bedroom and jumped on the makeup table. He looked at the Jiao Ma's makeup mirror. It seemed that he had gained some weight. It was easy to gain weight during the new year. Zheng Tan did not go out much this year. He ate and slept all day. With Zheng Tan's huge appetite, it would be strange if he did not gain weight. He had been cooped up at home and did not want to go out. Zheng Tan attributed it to spring fatigue and autumn fatigue. However, it seemed that he should go out more often. Winter was over, and he did not need to gain weight anymore. Zheng Tan did not go out directly from the side door of the eastern courtyard. Instead, he walked around the school. When he passed by a small path, he happened to hear Zheng Jing, the only female graduate student under the Jiao Pa, complaining about the inappropriate behavior of some teachers in the school. Just like Xian complained before the new year, the graduate students did not have much confidence in speaking in the school without the support of their bosses. The first was the competition for public resources. Even if it was a public resource, it had to be used on a first-come, first-served basis. There were limited resources and funds. Whoever had the ability would be the first to use them and occupy them. But now, Zheng Tan listens to Zheng Jing's complaints. It seems that there are more things than what Xian said. Otherwise, Zheng Jing would not have said, "The temple is small, but the pond is shallow." Although Zheng Tan did not know much about their school, she knew from eavesdropping on Zheng Jing and Xian's complaints that they were sometimes bullied by other teachers in the school. It was not uncommon for senior brothers and sisters in the school to bully junior brothers and sisters with the tacit approval of their mentors. Competition between students in the same school existed all the time. Sometimes, those who engaged in scientific research might not lose to those who engaged in politics. In this day and age, those who did not care about chores and focused on their studies would either have someone to back them up, or they would be reduced to cannon fodder in fights or ladders for others to climb up the social ladder. As for the rest, the proportion of those who could follow their own path was too small. However, the Jiao Pa wasn't the kind of person who would swallow his anger and suffer in silence. Just wait for him to settle the score later. Zheng Tan was very confident in his cat's father. Zheng Tan still planned to go to the affiliated hospital today. He was not familiar with this place yet. When he arrived at the hospital, Zheng Tan couldn't help but think of the old lady who left a good impression on him when he came here last year. He wondered how the old lady was doing now and how she was recovering. Jumping on the wall, Zheng Tan walked along the high wall. Even in winter, he could see many green courtyards. Today, there were many new greenery. It was full of vitality. Today's weather was also good. Some patients who were recovering well but couldn't stay in the ward came out to walk with their family members. Looking at the surrounding scenery, they felt much better. Zheng Tan didn't plan to look carefully. He just glanced at the wall as he walked along. Because of the taboo incident with the middle-aged woman last year, Zheng Tan felt that it was better not to be too ostentatious in the hospital. Although he didn't look carefully and his footsteps were hurried, what surprised Zheng Tan was that he was stopped by someone after a few steps. At first, Zheng Tan didn't think it was him. It wasn't until the person called the black cat on the wall a few times that Zheng Tan looked over. The person who called out to Zheng Tan was a young nurse. She wasn't the one he saw last year. Next to the young nurse, There was an old lady in a wheelchair who was being pushed around by the young nurse. The person in the wheelchair was the old lady Zheng Tan saw last year. When Zheng Tan looked over, the old lady waved at him. Compared to last year, the old lady looked a lot thinner now. However, her complexion was better. When she looked at people, the expression in her eyes made people's moods unconsciously develop. Thinking about it, the old lady saw Zheng Tan but couldn't shout, so she asked the young nurse who was in charge of pushing the wheelchair to speak. The young nurse looked at Zheng Tan with a puzzled gaze. She knew that many people in the hospital were afraid of pure black things. Last time, there was a person who wore a black suit when visiting a patient. The patient threw something at him. The patient said that the person had sinister intentions and scolded him for a long time. But now, the old lady was so enthusiastic about a black cat. It was really puzzling. There were patients who came out for a walk around. When they saw the old lady like this, they asked the doubts in their hearts. However, they didn't get close. People who were particular about this were afraid of provoking something bad. Old lady, my surgery went so smoothly thanks to this cat. Regardless of the truth, the old lady did have the intention to whitewash Zheng Tan. Some people around believed it, and some didn't. He didn't care about what others thought. Zheng Tan felt that since the old lady wanted to protect him, there was no reason for him to directly embarrass her. Since the old lady beckoned him over, Zheng Tan jumped off the wall and walked over. The old lady wanted Zheng Tan to sit in her arms, but Zheng Tan didn't do it. He walked beside the wheelchair. The young nurse slowly pushed the old lady down the road. Perhaps it was because there was a black cat following them, but the young nurse purposely avoided crowded places to avoid causing trouble for the other patients. After all, not everyone could tolerate a black cat in a place like this. After walking half a circle, the young nurse was ready to push the old lady back. Zheng Tan looked at the old lady's tired face and knew that the old lady wanted to rest. He decided to walk with her and leave. Hearing that the old lady's surgery went smoothly and her recovery was ideal, Zheng Tan's heart was relieved. However, this was just a coincidence. She was just a passerby. Zheng Tan didn't want to get too close to her. After walking a circle, they came to a fork in the road. Zheng Tan was about to turn and leave when he looked up and saw 3 people standing at the fork. 2 men and a woman. Zheng Tan saw the woman when he came over last year. She was the middle-aged woman who rejected him. Standing next to the middle-aged woman should be her husband, the old lady's son that the young nurse said. That person looked quite steady. He should be the kind of person who stood at the top and gave out orders on a daily basis. At the moment, the couple was talking to a young man in his 20s. Looking at the couple, the young man should have some status. Otherwise, the couple wouldn't treat him like this. This was the thought of the people around, including the young nurse who pushed the wheelchair, when they saw this scene. Your son came to see you again. The young nurse saw the people standing at the fork and said with a smile. She knew that the old lady had a very capable son. She heard that he was the boss of a big company. He was usually very busy, but when he had time, he would come to the hospital to see the old lady, especially during the days of the old lady's surgery. He was almost always with the old lady. If it weren't for the old lady's insistence, this person would have sent more people to take care of her. Previously, he was prepared to arrange for the operation abroad, but the old lady refused. In general, he was a filial son. The old lady was also very satisfied with this son, and the smile on her face deepened. However, standing next to the wheelchair, Zheng Tan's heart was in turmoil. He just glanced at the couple and didn't pay attention to them anymore. His focus was on the young man. That young man, how to describe it, was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. His hair was meticulously combed, and he had put in a lot of thought into his clothes. When he spoke to the couple, his smile was appropriate, not humble, not ostentatious. At first glance, people would definitely think that this person must have been taught by a big family with a very good background. Even if he didn't have a big family background, he was a social elite with a high level of knowledge, quality, responsibility, goals, contributions, and achievements. However, this social elite that everyone thought was well-educated and polite, in Zheng Tan's eyes, was a high-level liar with godlike acting skills. That's right, This person was the fake rich second generation with wine-red hair that Zheng Tan had seen when he followed Heir Mao to track down Senior Walnut. That time, this person's face had been beaten up, so he couldn't see clearly what he looked like. Thinking about the fake ID photo in Senior Walnut's hands and comparing it to this person's appearance now, the difference between the two was too big. Zheng Tan looked carefully a few times. Although there was no evidence to prove that this person was the same red-haired person from last time, Zheng Tan felt that this was the same person. Sometimes, a change in temperament or a change in hairstyle could make a completely different person. However, Zheng Tan now knew that temperament could also be faked. And this person could change without any trace, using his acting skills to perfection. Zheng Tan couldn't help but sigh again. It was a pity that this person didn't go into acting. However, if this person was really a liar, could he have fooled the couple so easily? Judging from the young nurse pushing the wheelchair, Zheng Tan didn't think that the couple would believe people so easily. Just as he was thinking, Zheng Tan noticed a detail. Although the middle-aged woman didn't say much and just stood there listening to her husband talk to the young man in front of her, her eyes intentionally or unintentionally swept over the man's cufflinks. Most people wouldn't pay much attention to cufflinks, but men with a certain social status would pay attention to these small details. A small cufflink could be an obvious sign of a woman's good taste. Some people even said that in this era without aristocrats, cufflinks could make a yuppie man elegant. Zheng Tan used to be a rich second-generation heir, and he had made his way into some circles. He had attended many parties, and before one of the parties, he had heard from a playmate who was helping him pick out a dress about the cufflinks. It was because of this that Zheng Tan knew about some of the things that he usually did not pay attention to. Now, the middle-aged woman's behavior reminded Zheng Tan of these details. Jiao Pa often told Jiao Yuan that details determine success or failure. This high-level liar could be successful because he took care of these details to perfection. Looking at the swindler who was chatting with the couple, Zheng Tan was once again in awe of him. In this day and age, whether it was a street sweeper or a social elite, there were specializations in the field and development of other skills. Who would have thought that this person who was just a fake rich second generation before the new year would suddenly become a social elite? His appearance and temperament told people that he was very cultured and cultured. He was a high-class social elite who had received an excellent education. It was because he understood the other side that the contrast was so great. Zheng Tan squatted there and kept staring at the man. After the three of them finished talking, the social elite came over to greet the old lady. He also seemed to casually ask about the black cat that was squatting next to him. Knowing that the cat was just a coincidence, the man didn't ask any more questions. When he left, the social elite glanced at Zheng Tan again and then walked to a building in the hospital, saying that he was going to get the medical report. Chapter 230. In fact, Zheng Tan had hesitated whether or not he should tell Senior Walnut, but in the end he gave up. Generally speaking, he didn't have any enmity with that high-level swindler. That person's actions on the mountain could actually be considered as helping him, since it didn't affect his own interests and didn't seem to be a threat to himself and Senior Walnut. Zheng Tan was too lazy to bother. In the following period of time, Zheng Tan didn't see that high-level swindler when he left the affiliated hospital. There were too many people who came to the affiliated hospital for treatment every day. After all, this was a real tertiary grade A hospital. There were so many people who came to see a doctor or were already hospitalized here that Zheng Tan couldn't see them all. Even that old lady, it was rare for him to see her once in 3 times. It could only be said that he was lucky and coincidental to have met her before. As for that high-level swindler, as the days passed, Zheng Tan didn't think about him anymore. Zheng Tan was too lazy to pay too much attention to people and things that had nothing to do with his life. On this day, Zheng Tan once again came to a place he hadn't been to for a long time, the night building. The person who brought Zheng Tan here was Celestine, and the person with Celestine was his wife. It was rare to see Celestine bring his wife to a place like the night building. Although the night building was completely different from the other messy clubs, nightclubs, and bars, Celestine's wife looked like an honest person. She was also the kind of girl who was well-behaved when she was a student. She rarely went out in the middle of the night, and basically never went to a nightclub or bar. Celestine's wife wasn't a particularly beautiful person. Her appearance could only be considered average, but she was very kind, virtuous, and took care of the family. When Celestine chatted with some friends before he got married, he said that marriage was for the sake of the future. Finally, he found such a suitable wife, and Celestine was quite satisfied with this wife. Looking at Celestine's current routine, it was clear that it wasn't as messy as before. He went to bed and woke up early, and it had been a long time since he came to the night building. The reason why he was here today was actually for a performance at the East Palace tonight. Tonight, the band performing at the East Palace was a foreign band. They combined traditional and old-fashioned blues with urban blues and formed their own style. They might not be famous among some young people in their teens or 20s, but in terms of international fame, they were much better than some of the so-called popular bands in China. Of course, there were many people who liked this band in China. Celestine's wife was one of them. It was not that Mrs. Wei liked blues music, but she had read a book written by the lead singer of this band. That was why she liked this band. This was also the main reason why Celestine, who had been upgraded to a good husband and rarely went out at night, brought his wife here. And about coming to the night building, Celestine finally remembered Zheng Tan. He drove his wife to Tsinghua University, picked up Zheng Tan, and went to the night building. Celestine brought his wife here. Zheng Tan certainly didn't want to be a third wheel. Besides, he had his own private room in the night building, so he didn't want to disturb the couple. However, Celestine was afraid that Zheng Tan would be bored alone, so he asked Zheng Tan if he wanted to find some friends to play with. Zheng Tan thought about it. He couldn't find animals now, but he could find people. Therefore, Jin and the others, who were resting at home, got up after receiving the phone call. They had been busy these 2 days. They didn't have a performance in the night building, but they had other things to do. They were busy during the day, so they planned to go to bed early when they came back. They didn't expect to receive a call from Celestine. Jin and the others released their first album last year. The results were good, especially the song, Cat's Fantasy, which had no lyrics but some cat sounds. Many people called it last year's divine song. Perhaps it was too exaggerated to say that the song was popular because the style of this song was too strange, but it didn't make people feel bored. On the contrary, sometimes people felt that it was worth thinking about. A critic also said that there was a cat in everyone's heart. Could be lazy, clever, proud, or lovable. Everyone had a different feeling when they listened to this song. Although Jin and the others made some achievements last year, they were still too far away from those big names. Just like how Jin and the others were still not qualified to perform in the East Palace, there were many bands that performed outside the East Palace that were more famous than Jin and the others. They were not qualified to enter the East Palace, let alone Jin and the others. With Jin and the others' status, it was impossible for them to have a private room in the night building, let alone a private room. Now that someone told them that there was such an opportunity in front of them, they were naturally quite happy. They naturally knew the bands that performed in the East Palace today. Being able to listen to these masters' performances and learn something from them would be very beneficial for their future development. Hey, Jin, was it really Mr. Wei who invited us? The band's drummer, Wang Lin, quickly put on his clothes and asked. Although the people in the night building called Celestine Brother Ling, Jin and the others now directly called him Mr. Wei when they met Celestine, with some reverence. The others beside him also waited for Jin to explain. The phone call was from Mr. Wei. He only asked if we were going to watch the performance. As for the private room, Jin now calmed down and realized that Celestine did not seem to let them go to his private room. Forget it, we'll talk about it when we're there. It's good enough that we can go to the private room. Let alone a private room, we don't even have the money to go to the East Palace. Be content. Although he did not say it, Jin's intuition told him that it was related to the cat. He knew that the person who sent the invitation was definitely not someone from the night building. Otherwise, they would not have waited until now to say it. Even when their results were released, they did not hear any movement from the other side. As for Celestine, in terms of relationship, Celestine was not as familiar with them as the cat. When Jin and the others arrived at the night building, they happened to meet a band that was performing in the same area as Jin. They were all young people with a strong sense of competition. Whether they performed or not, these two bands were serious about each other. When they met, it was inevitable that they would say a few words to each other. However, now that they were at the entrance of the night building, both sides restrained themselves. Jean and the others were in a hurry, so they could not let Celestine wait there. They stopped Wang Zhe, who was about to continue, and lifted their feet to enter the night building. They were not qualified to enter from the side door, so they could only enter from the front door and be led by the people inside. Because Celestine had already greeted them, the people in the night building were also familiar with Jean and the others. After recognizing them, they directly led them upstairs. This made the band that had not gone far stunned for a long time. Only Jean had been to the private room before. Even so, they were still very nervous. Even Wang Zhe, who was usually talkative, kept his mouth tightly shut, afraid that something would go wrong. The people in front led Jean and the others forward. When they passed by Celestine's room, Jean thought to himself, "Sure enough, it's not Celestine's private room." Just as he thought of this, Jean saw the people in front of him raise their hand and knock on the door of the next room. Click. With a soft sound, the door opened. The people in front of them motioned for Jean and the others to go in. Jean and the others swallowed their saliva and tidied up their clothes, for fear that if they met the big shots later, they would leave a bad impression on them. However, after they stepped into the door, the five of them were almost shocked by the layout in front of them. This was too unconventional. It was completely different from what they had imagined. What was the matter with the hanging hairy mouse? What was the soft couch in the shape of a cat's paw trying to express? Also, what were those paintings on the wall? Were they prepared for children? The dignified night building actually had such a place. This was the first feeling the five of them had when they came in. When they saw the cat sitting calmly on the sofa, they were all in a bad mood. This cat, to them, seemed to exist to subvert their understanding of the world. Behind them, Wang Zhe poked Jean and whispered, "Captain." After so many years of experience, he always had some skills in reading people's expressions. However, when it came to a cat, he didn't know where to start. Jean paused and had some ideas in his mind. He walked to the sofa where Zheng Tan was and sat on the chair next to the coffee table. Zheng Tan glanced at him and pushed a plate of nuts on the coffee table in front of him to Jean. Jean looked at the various nuts on the plate and began to peel them. He didn't eat the peeled nuts but put them on another small plate in front of Zheng Tan. The four people behind Jean were speechless. Did this mean that they were going to serve the cat? At this time, Celestine came in from next door. After coming in, he briefly explained to Jean and the others. The general idea was that he called them over just to let them accompany the cat and listen to the performance. After that, Celestine went back to accompany his wife next door. Now, the performance outside had already begun. Except for Jean, the other four people were somewhat restrained and helpless. They didn't speak the same language and were of different species, so they always felt very awkward. However, seeing Jean like this, they couldn't stay idle, so they all came over to help him peel the nuts. Zheng Tan was only familiar with Jean, and he rarely met the other four people. However, now it seemed that these people were quite smart. Even in the face of a cat, in the face of such an unexpected situation, they could try to calm down and deal with it as calmly as possible. They didn't have too many tricks. In general, Zheng Tan now had a good impression of these people. He thought that if he came again, he could call them over to help him peel the nuts. This was a mutually beneficial thing. Zheng Tan came here just to relax, and Jean and the others could better listen to some masters of the East Palace. Zheng Tan didn't need to pay for his expenses here. They were all free. In fact, he didn't spend much. He didn't dare to drink now, because he would definitely be scolded when he went back. If he just listened to the performance and ate some snacks, the cost was nothing to the night building. When they peeled half a plate, Zheng Tan raised his paw and pushed the remaining nuts to Jean. Then, he ate a few pistachios and went to the window to look at the performance below. Cats also eat this? Wang Zhe opened his mouth and asked Jean silently. He carefully pointed to the small plate on the coffee table with all kinds of peeled nuts. Jean glanced at him, indicating that Wang Zhe shouldn't talk nonsense. Then he also went to the window and looked at the performance below. The main purpose of their coming here was to watch the performance. Soon, the 5 people swept away the helplessness and awkwardness just now. Looking at the performance below, the 5 of them also exchanged their experiences and talked about their own differences. Zheng Tan was not interested in music. When he scrolled down, he mainly focused on the good-looking girls, such as the white-collared lady in professional attire, or the innocent-looking female student, or **ck. When Zheng Tan's gaze swept over one place, he froze. He saw an acquaintance. That high-level liar. Chapter 231. Zheng Tan was quite surprised to see this person in the night tower. The cost of living in the East Palace was not a small amount. Was this person really not short of money? These days, swindlers lived a much better life than white-collar workers who worked hard in offices. They drove luxury cars, flirted with high-quality girls, and often lingered in expensive places. Even Zheng Tan could not help but sigh at the difference. The person did not notice Zheng Tan's gaze. Perhaps even if he did, he was used to attracting attention in the venue below. In fact, from the light and angle, it was not easy for the people below to see the situation in the private room above. Even if they could, Zheng Tan did not care. He was not afraid of being seen. Now, compared to the music he could not appreciate, Zheng Tan was more curious about the identity of this swindler. Today, the performance at the East Palace ended around 10:30. Some people would leave, but for others, their nightlife had just begun. They were still active and would be active until 2 or 3 in the morning. Celestine, who had a family, would not stay here for long. He prepared to leave with his wife. Zheng Tan would definitely be with them. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to go back. In the parking lot, when Celestine drove, he did not close the windows at first. After staying in the night tower for so long, he breathed in more air to clear his mind. There were many cars around the night tower, so it would take some time to drive out onto the main road. Zheng Tan stood up and looked outside through the half-open rear window. He looked around and his gaze fell on a car not far in front of him. Zheng Tan did not see the brand of the car, nor could he remember the type of car. However, Zheng Tan was sure that the car was not cheap. It was different from the luxury sports car that Walnut and the others were looking for. This car was more business-oriented and stable. It was more suitable for the identity of the swindler. Zheng Tan did not expect to meet the high-level swindler twice by hitching a ride with Celestine. It was a bit too much to say that enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. After all, there was no hatred. At this moment, the high-level swindler in Zheng Tan's eyes was very gentlemanly, opening the car door for the hot lady. He closed the door and walked over to the driver's seat. Just as he was about to open the door, he paused and looked at the car that was slowly driving by. The neon lights and street lamps outside the night building were all turned on, and the angle of the light was just enough to shine on Zheng Tan's cat head that was peeking out of the half-open car window. With the brightness of the lights outside the night building, anyone who wasn't visually impaired would be able to see the cat's head clearly. Just a moment ago, he was still imagining how he was going to have sex, but the next moment, he couldn't wait to smash the steering wheel. He took a closer look at the back window of the car that was slowly driving past, and he suddenly couldn't calm down. **ck. It was really strange. Zheng Tan couldn't see the man's eyes. The light reflected from the man's glasses covered his eyes. However, Zheng Tan noticed that when the man looked in his direction, there was a momentary stiffness, as if he had seen something impossible. However, the man quickly covered it up, as if that momentary stiffness was just an illusion under the neon lights. Driving out of the night building's parking lot, the car sped up and the windows were closed. When Zheng Tan looked back, he didn't see the man's car. Although he had met the man twice tonight, Zheng Tan didn't think that he would have anything to do with the swindler. He didn't think that the swindler would go so far as to trick the Jiao family. After returning to the villa complex, Zheng Tan's life continued at a normal pace. He did what he was supposed to do, and there were no ripples caused by the swindler. The flowers were blooming in spring, and there were more insects. Just look at the active birds in the surroundings. However, around the villa complex, not only were the birds active, there were also cats. When the sheriff and Huang saw the jumping insects on the ground, they were as excited as Air Tong seeing its favorite poop. Depang, who was sent out by his grandmother, probably wanted to find a quiet place to sleep without being disturbed, so he climbed up the crabapple tree nearby. Then, there was the scene that Zheng Tan saw of a dragon Li pressing down on a crabapple tree. This crabapple tree wasn't very thick in Zheng Tan's eyes. He heard that there was a small path here a long time ago, and crabapple trees were planted on both sides of the path. However, when the school was built, most of the crabapple trees were dug up, leaving only a few. After so many years, this was the only remaining crabapple tree. Now, the only crabapple tree was being pressed down by the fat man Depang. Zheng Tan saw that the branches looked like they were about to break. Sure enough, cats were a big killer for plants. In places where cats were often active, plants had to be resistant to bites, scratches, and pressure. After watching the sheriff and the others eat a few insects of unknown species in the villa complex, Zheng Tan ran out of the house for a walk. It was such a good time to come out for a walk. Only then would one feel that the day was so complete. After passing by the affiliated hospital, Zheng Tan walked along the flower beds and walls on the side of the street. The area near the hospital was not noisy. Although there was a commercial street here, it was still a little far from here. Moreover, it was not on the same line as the hospital, so he had to turn halfway. Zheng Tan didn't turn, but walked straight along the street. According to the map, he could see a lake in front of him. The lake was not small, and there were some developed properties around it. He had heard from Air Mao that his great-aunt lived in a house near the lake, but he didn't know which lake it was. After all, there were more than 2 or 3 lakes in Chuhua City. Zheng Tan didn't want to visit Air Mao's great-aunt. That old woman was too difficult to please, and he wasn't in the mood to visit her. After walking past a big hotel and some small shops around it, Zheng Tan saw a residential area marked on the map. Zheng Tan jumped onto a big sycamore tree by the side of the road to take a look. Part of the residential area was made up of small villas, while the other part was made up of tall elevators. He had heard that some teachers in Chuhua University had bought houses here. It was close to the university, and the environment was good. It was not noisy. Zheng Tan had once heard from the Jiaopa that he had the intention to buy a house here. One of his colleagues had bought a house here, but because of his job transfer he had planned to sell it. The Jiaopa had gone over to check it out, but he felt that the neighbors there were not good, so he didn't buy it. However, Zheng Tan was glad that the Jiaopa didn't buy it. In comparison, he was actually more inclined to buy a house in the East District. To Zheng Tan, it didn't matter if the place was small or not. What was important was the place to play and playmates. After climbing over the wall on the side, Zheng Tan walked along some small paths inside. The greenery here was really good. No wonder the Jiaopa had taken a liking to this place. He had heard that the Jiaopa had invited an old professor who was in the field of landscape design to come here. A little Pekingese barked in its yard. When it saw Zheng Tan, it barked fiercely. Unfortunately, it couldn't come out. Zheng Tan ignored it and continued to look at the surrounding houses and layout with interest. This residential area had been built for a few years. The trees were lush with leaves. Zheng Tan even saw a few cats playing there. When they saw Zheng Tan, the cats didn't show too much hostility. At most, they were vigilant and curious. It seemed that they were surprised by the sudden appearance of this unfamiliar guy. They didn't show any hostility, and Zheng Tan didn't have the intention to fight for territory. They went their own ways. The residential area near the lake was built with high fences not far from the lake. Outside the fences was a road that could accommodate 2 cars at the same time. On the other side of the road was a green belt, and on the other side was the lake. There were all kinds of warning signs and fences by the lake. Many incidents of people falling into the lake had happened around this area. Coming out of the residential area, Zheng Tan walked along the road near the lake. He jumped onto a tree and looked around to identify the road ahead. Unexpectedly, Zheng Tan really found something that interested him. It was a car, a high-end car, and it looked quite familiar. Zheng Tan wasn't sure if it was the same car that he saw at the night building that day. He jumped down the tree and walked over the fence. The place where the car was parked was still the villa area. In fact, the villas in this area all looked similar. Except for the few that the owners had specially spent a lot of effort to decorate, there wasn't much difference. Zheng Tan looked at the house number of the villa and listened to the movements inside. There were voices in the house. There were two people talking. One was the liar in Zheng Tan's eyes, and the other was the old lady that Zheng Tan saw at the hospital. The atmosphere of the two people's conversation was quite relaxed. Zheng Tan heard the old lady laugh. It turned out that the old lady lived here. The door was closed, but the window next to it wasn't closed. Zheng Tan listened to the conversation from under the window. The general content seemed to be that because something had happened to a colleague in the company, the senior liar sent the colleague to the hospital for a checkup and then sent her home. That colleague was a beauty, and this scene was coincidentally seen by the old lady who went out for a walk. When she saw that it was an acquaintance, she invited him to the house for a cup of tea. As they chatted, that person talked about his hard work history. Zheng Tan listened and got goosebumps. That person's image of himself was what people called other people's children. He was born poor, had a miserable life, had excellent grades, worked hard, had the courage to work hard, had the ability, entered a big company, was valued by the boss, and finally became a social elite. At the same time, he talked about the ups and downs of the process, which made the old lady look at him more kindly. Zheng Tan spat in his heart. What a load of bullshit. Who was the good-for-nothing that pretended to be a rich second generation on the mountain? That person didn't keep talking about his successful career. After his career, it was time to talk about his love history. He talked about the female colleague that was sent over today. The more Zheng Tan listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. This person was really good at making up stories. If he hadn't seen the other side, Zheng Tan would have been fooled like the old lady. Speaking of which, Zheng Tan was really curious. Did this person also pretend to be shy when making up stories? Could he be so thick-skinned and shy? After thinking about it, Zheng Tan jumped on the windowsill and looked inside. Needless to say, that person's smile was indeed a little shy. The old lady was amused and remembered the past. Back then, the old lady was about to tell the story of her past to encourage the young man in front of her, but she didn't expect that when she slightly tilted her head to look outside the window, she saw a black cat standing on the windowsill. Oh, isn't this that one? The old lady's attention was immediately diverted. She called the housekeeper to see if there was any suitable food to feed the cat. A certain liar who was sitting on the sofa with a cup of tea in his hand couldn't help but twitch his face. Although he didn't show his surging emotions, he had already cursed the entire alpaca community in his heart. Damn. Chapter 232. Under the old lady's invitation, Zheng Tan calmly stepped onto the sofa next to her and lay down. The nanny originally wanted to say something, but seeing that the old lady didn't mind, she didn't say anything. However, she thought to herself that she should go out to buy some flea medicine later. She heard that there were a lot of fleas on cats outside. She didn't know if the fleas would be brought in. Just in case, it was better to be more careful. Zheng Tan noticed that the nanny's attitude towards him wasn't very good, but she didn't have any bad intentions. At most, she was a little annoyed, which could be ignored. The nanny put a small bowl of warm fish soup on the small tea table next to the sofa. Zheng Tan sniffed it but didn't eat it. He wasn't hungry now, and when he was outside he wouldn't eat anything randomly. In fact, the most important thing was that there was half a fish head in the bowl. Zheng Tan didn't like fish heads. The nanny looked at the old lady and asked if she wanted to change the food. The old lady glanced at the cat on the sofa and waved her hand. Leave it there for now. After that, the old lady looked at the man again. I saw this cat when I was in the hospital. I feel that this cat and I are quite fated. I was wondering if it was a cat raised by someone nearby. I didn't expect to see it here. Although the man sitting on the other sofa smiled and listened to the old lady's words, he was roaring in his heart. He didn't feel that he had any fate with this cat. He just felt that he and the cat didn't get along well. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. The old lady was still sighing about the coincidence and luck of meeting this cat at the hospital and at home. Now that she said this, he had to sigh even more. The man didn't doubt that this cat was the same one he met before the new year. He still had a good eyesight. After so many years, this was the first time he met such an evil cat. It was a few hours' drive from Chuhua City to the mountainous area. It was possible to meet this cat in the hospital when he came to Chuhua City. It was also possible to meet this cat when he went out at night to get high. Now, it was even possible to meet this cat when he came out to find a target to talk to. What should he say? What fate? The fate of cat poop. The cat just squatted there, not barking or eating. It just looked at you as if it was mocking you. Its eyes seemed to be saying, "Lie, why don't you King continue lying?" How could this not be depressing? "Hey Xiao Gao, where were we just now?" The old lady finally turned the topic back. Jing Tan looked at little Gao. He remembered that the fake ID in Walnut's hands didn't have the surname Gao. Xiao Gao obviously also noticed the way the cat on the sofa 2 steps away was looking at him. Although the atmosphere and mood had changed, Xiao Gao was quite skillful. It was as if he had not experienced the black cat's disdainful look just now. With a perfect smile, he maintained the same expression and tone as before and said, "You were just about to tell me your story." In this day and age, who wasn't thick-skinned and tough enough to deal with all kinds of unexpected situations? "Oh yes, here we are." The old lady smoothed out the wrinkles on her clothes, took a deep breath, and seemed to be reminiscing. Xiao Gao gently put down the teacup, as if he was afraid to disturb the old lady's memories. He calmed down and prepared to listen to the old lady's story to confirm if this was the person he was looking for. This was his third suspect and also the most likely one. If he could confirm it, this task could be completed smoothly. Just as the two of them began to build up their emotions again, ding 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 ding, the sound of the spoons stirring was heard, pulling the old lady's thoughts back from her memories. She looked up and saw that the black cat was standing up. One of its front paws was supporting itself on the armrest of the sofa, while the other paw was fiddling with the porcelain spoon in the bowl of fish soup on the small tea table next to it. The old lady didn't blame Zheng Tan. Instead, she smiled kindly and raised her hand to pat Zheng Tan's head. Zheng Tan dodged, but he didn't fiddle with the spoon again. He seemed to be very well behaved as he sat on the sofa. When the old lady started to talk about the past with Xiao Gao, Zheng Tan's side started to rumble again. Zheng Tan guessed that this person was probably trying to get some information from the old lady. Zheng Tan had a good impression of this old lady. On the contrary, when he saw this pretentious young man wearing a thick mask in front of him, Zheng Tan couldn't help but want to make things difficult for him. Obviously, Zheng Tan had succeeded in making things difficult for him. Even if Xiao Gao still maintained a nearly perfect expression on his face, he actually wanted to hold his chest and vomit blood. Many times, opportunities didn't come so easily. They couldn't appear abrupt, and they couldn't make people wary. If they missed one, they would have to wait for who knows how long before they could find the next good opportunity. For Xiao Gao, this task, in his opinion, had progressed to this point without any difficulty. It was easy to get information, but he didn't expect that after the appearance of this cat, things wouldn't go so smoothly. F***ck, he was against the black cat, wasn't he? No wonder he always heard people say that encountering a black cat was unlucky. Xiao Gao now had a deep understanding. After encountering the black cat that night, he left the night building, and on the way, his car tire burst once. He was really unlucky. After being interrupted by Zheng Tan several times, the old lady lost interest in continuing to recall, but she didn't have any dissatisfaction with Zheng Tan. She only said to Xiao Gao, "Young man, you have to seize the opportunity. I missed it when I was young. Even if I regret it now, it won't help." Xiao Gao's eyes flashed slightly, but he didn't continue to ask too much. So much time had passed, so he politely said goodbye to the old lady. When he left, he seemed to inadvertently glance at the black cat on the sofa. Zheng Tan stared back at him, but intuition told him that this guy was actually full of tricks, and was probably thinking about how to fight back in the future. After Xiao Gao left, the old lady took Zheng Tan to the backyard to see the flowers she planted. She also asked Zheng Tan to come and accompany her when he had time. The old lady actually didn't expect the cat in front of her to understand anything. She just sometimes wanted to find a suitable person to talk to, especially when she was recalling some things in the past. The old lady sat on the rattan chair in the backyard and sighed. It's been almost 60 years. Zheng Tan didn't quite understand why the old lady sighed, but after thinking about it, he guessed that it had something to do with the purpose of Xiao Gao coming over. Unfortunately, the old lady didn't want to talk about it now. It's okay. When he had the mood to come here for a walk in the future, he could come here to eat and drink. He would probably be able to hear the old lady reminiscing about the past. On the other side, Xiao Gao left the old lady's villa and drove along the lake, preparing to leave the residential area from this road. At this time, his cell phone rang. Xiao Gao stopped the car by the side, looked at the golden turtle on the screen, and answered the phone. Hello, Liu Ba, are you busy now? There's an order that I can't accept. I want to see if you're interested, the person on the other side said. Tell me about it. The Xiao Gao, the old lady was talking about, and the Liu Ba, the person on the other side of the phone said. His tone was not as humble as when he was talking to the old lady just now. At this moment he sounded more casual, as if there were not many things that he cared about. After hearing a few words from the person on the other side of the phone, Liu Ba interrupted, the money is too little, and it's too boring. I won't accept it. Well, I also guessed that you would reject it. I'll find someone else, the golden turtle said. In fact, when he decided to make the call, he thought that Liu Ba probably wouldn't be interested in this order. The reward for this order was a big order for others, but for Liu Ba, it was not even comparable to the small orders he did 5 years ago. Liu Ba was a well-known person in the circle of private detectives. It was said that when he was still a child, he began to help people catch mistresses, find evidence, and make money. Now, he could be said to be very experienced and had a strong understanding. The success rate of taking orders was quite high, and he kept his mouth shut. Similarly, the reward was also high. Even if the reward was sometimes ridiculously high, there was still an endless stream of people looking for him. In China, there were actually laws and regulations that explicitly prohibited the existence of private detectives. Therefore, until now, this industry could not be openly registered. However, in the social reality, there was a need for private detectives to develop, and it was easy for them to take advantage of loopholes. These days, there were more and more people who relied on this industry to make a living. However, every industry was divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels. In this special circle, Liu Ba was a legendary person. There were too many legends and rumors about him, but it was limited to this small circle, and outsiders did not know much about him. From the beginning of small order to now only taking on some big orders, Liu Ba could be said to be standing at the top of the pyramid in this circle. As for Golden Turtle, it was also a code name, but in terms of fame, it was far less famous than Liu Ba. Golden Turtle was now doing nothing in a marriage consulting firm, and he secretly took on some jobs such as investigating mistresses and obtaining divorce evidence. These jobs were easy to do, and he could earn money quickly. Generally, he would not cause any big trouble. Sometimes, when he met some rich people, he would also make a lot of money. Of course, Golden Turtle knew that what they were doing now was just the leftovers of Liu Ba. Speaking of which, Liu Ba could be considered Golden Turtle as half-master, but in terms of age, Golden Turtle was actually 10 years older than Liu Ba. What's wrong? Are you in trouble? Could it be that some ignorant person offended you again? Golden Turtle could tell from the other party's words that this person was not in a good mood. Liu Ba sneered, "You speak as if I'm a scourge. Let me think. The last person who offended you suddenly fainted when he was having sex with his wife. The guy who offended you suddenly coughed up blood during an interview, causing the public to speculate about him. The guy who offended you suddenly coughed up blood during an interview, causing the public to speculate about him. The guy who offended you before that suddenly broke his arm when he was dancing. I don't know if he's out of the hospital now. Sigh, this is only what I know. I believe and deeply believe that these people are only a small part of you. There are still a lot of people I don't know about. So, I'm curious. Which unlucky person offended you this time?" Liu Ba chewed gum and blew a bubble. When the bubble burst, she slowly said, "A cat." "What?" I said, "The one who caused me trouble this time was a cat." Chapter 233. Although the man and the cat hated each other, Lu Bai usually wouldn't care about anything else before she completed the task at hand. Even if she had a personal grudge against someone or didn't like them, she wouldn't immediately seek revenge. The task at hand was more important. Therefore, Zheng Tan's life was still peaceful for a period of time. Sometimes, he would wander around the residential area by the lake. If he went there in the afternoon, he could have afternoon tea and temporarily fill his stomach. What Zheng Tan wanted to do was listen to the old lady's complaints. The old lady's son would often visit her. Even if he could not make it, he would call to ask about her. The family hired a nanny to take care of the old lady. For the old lady, other than going out for a walk, eating, drinking, and sleeping at home, she was very bored. She could not go on long trips because her body had not fully recovered. Therefore, Zheng Tan became a good listener. From the old lady's words, Zheng Tan knew that Xiao Gao had come twice, but Zheng Tan did not meet him. When Zheng Tan heard the old lady say that she had a pleasant conversation with Xiao Gao, she knew that the old lady must have been tricked into revealing something. Usually, when they had a pleasant conversation, they would not be too vigilant or defensive. Thinking about the thick-skinned Xiao Gao with his superb acting skills, and then looking at the old lady, it was easy to imagine what kind of pleasant conversation would be like without Zheng Tan's interference. Xiao Gao was probably overjoyed. However, Xiao Gao did not appear again in recent days. Without Xiao Gao to chat with the old lady, Zheng Tan would occasionally hear the old lady's sighs when he came over, as well as the things that she had hidden deep in her memory because of Xiao Gao. The old lady said that when she was young, she had a relationship and almost had a positive outcome. Unfortunately, due to some reasons, they separated. Although they still communicated through letters for a few years, another accident happened. Since then, the old lady moved to Chuhua City, and there was no news of the other party. Zheng Tan felt that the old lady must be quite lonely now. Although her son had always been concerned about her, because he was too busy with work, the old lady didn't let him come over often. She also asked her daughter-in-law to take care of him more. She only needed to hire a nanny. As for her grandson, he had been sent to study abroad and was rarely seen all year round. Occasionally, he would make an overseas call. Zheng Tan had heard from the old men and women in the courtyard that people nowadays like to send their parents to the old folks' home to save time. However, these old men and women would rather die of old age than go to the old folks' home. Zheng Tan didn't know what a nursing home was like, but he often heard from the people in the compound that many elderly people hated that place. It was not as good as the news said. Some old people could only sit in front of the window every day, silently looking out. Perhaps they hoped that their relatives would visit them often, but most of the time, they were disappointed. There were also some old people whose memory deteriorated as they grew older. After staying in the nursing home for a long time, they didn't even recognize their relatives. If they stayed longer, they might forget their biological children. For example, the old lady's family. Her son was a well-known entrepreneur in Chuhua City and was filial enough. Although he couldn't come over often, he couldn't wait to hire 8 or 10 nannies for the old lady. In front of her son and daughter-in-law, the old lady would definitely be good, but in her heart, she was actually quite lonely. After all, nannies were not family. Little black cat, do you think I should get a pet like a cat or a dog? But at my age, I don't know how long I have left to live. What if I can't take care of them when the time comes? The old lady looked at Zheng Tan and said. Zheng Tan avoided the old lady's hand that reached out to touch the cat's head. He thought to himself, how am I small? In fact, Zheng Tan had seen many people in the same situation as this old lady. In the courtyard, there were many old people whose spouses had passed away early, and their children were not by their side. For example, Depang's old lady. However, although Depang's old lady lived in a smaller place than here, and the living conditions were not as good as here, the old lady lived quite comfortably. At home, she had Depang to accompany her, and outside, there were many old men and women in the courtyard to chat, sing and joke. Compared to the old lady in front of him, she was much better. It was no wonder that Depang's old lady was only willing to stay in the courtyard and not agree to her son moving out. Today, Zheng Tan took a stroll to the residential area again. When he got in through the iron fence and was about to visit the old lady and listen to her nagging, he found that the house was very lively today. There were a few cars parked outside the house, and they were all high-end cars worth millions. Looking at the license plates, 2 of them were not local, but Nanjing license plates. There were a few people sitting in the house. Zheng Tan only knew the old lady, her son, and her daughter-in-law. He did not know the others. The old lady's daughter-in-law, the middle-aged woman who had always found Zheng Tan an eyesore, was smiling brightly at this moment. Her entire being exuded a rare sense of closeness. The 2 middle-aged men also had smiles on their faces. They were talking, but their voices were not loud and they were not noisy. But where was the old lady? Zheng Tan poked his head out of the door to look inside. The old lady's son saw this and asked Zheng Tan to go in. The middle-aged woman's eyes flashed with displeasure. She felt that it was not good to let such a black cat in when there were important guests, but she did not want to disrespect her husband. Zheng Tan thought about it and walked in under everyone's gaze. He looked around but did not see the old lady. "Is this your cat?" the unfamiliar middle-aged man asked. "No, I don't know which family it is from, but my mother said that she and this cat are fated. When we were in the hospital..." The old lady's son briefly explained the matter, which surprised the 2 people. Although it doesn't look like a famous cat, it doesn't look like a stray cat either. It is so strong and it is not afraid of people. It looks like it is quite intelligent. The stranger laughed. Zheng Tan listened to the 2 people and was not in a hurry to find the old lady. He saw that there was a closed room on the first floor. That was where the old lady usually took her lunch break. She was probably in there now. From these people's conversation, Zheng Tan also got a piece of information. Other than the old lady, there was a little old man in the room. Zheng Tan's gossipy heart was suddenly ignited. 2 days ago, he was still listening to the old lady sigh about the past, and now there was an old man. This was the rhythm of the old lady finding a partner. However, the more he listened to these people's conversation, the more Zheng Tan felt that something was wrong. It turned out that this old man was the one that the old lady had been sighing about some time ago. He heard that these 2 old people were engaged when they were young, but then they went their separate ways. It had been almost 60 years since they separated. According to the conversation in the living room, these 2 old people, who were still single, wanted to get back together again. In fact, what surprised Zheng Tan the most was not that these 2 old people had gotten back together after 60 years, but what the unfamiliar middle-aged man said when he talked about Xiao Gao. The middle-aged man said that Xiao Gao was a department manager in his company. Some time ago, he was in contact with the old lady's son. Now, he was transferred to another place, so he was no longer in charge of some business in Chuhua City. Soon, there would be new people coming to contact them. Hearing the other party say this, the old lady's son did not ask any more questions. He even praised Xiao Gao as a very good and capable young man. Zheng Tan carefully observed the unfamiliar middle-aged man. The other party did not have any intention to talk about Xiao Gao. After a while, he chuckled and left. Zheng Tan thought about some of the things that had happened before. After listening to the conversation, he guessed that the unfamiliar middle-aged man wanted to find someone because of his father, so he contacted Xiao Gao. As for how Xiao Gao made a deal with the other party, how he got the title of department manager, and how he found out, Zheng Tan did not know. He did not need to find out. He also did not believe that the 2 old people getting back together, that the unfamiliar middle-aged man said was a coincidence. He only needed to look at the results now. In any case, whether or not the 2 old people getting back together was planned by the other party, now that the 2 old people had gotten back together, it was a good thing for both old people. The business cooperation between these 2 successful people would probably take a step forward. No matter how you looked at it, it was a good thing. Zheng Tan did not stay for long and left. He guessed that the 2 old people who had reunited after almost 60 years would definitely have a lot to talk about. To Zheng Tan, the old lady's family was just a passerby in his life. He did not need to spend too much time and energy on them, even if they were rich and had extraordinary identities. What really mattered was the Jiao family. At night, the 3 Jiao family members and a cat were sitting on the sofa watching a martial arts drama on TV. Zheng Tan was sleepy and kept yawning. Suddenly, he heard little Pomelo beside him say, "There's something wrong with the sound in the drama." Zheng Tan looked at the scene on TV and pricked up his ears to listen. The scene on TV was of the main character in a deep mountain. The background sound was the sound of birds chirping. There were also a few scenes that were dedicated to the birds. Zheng Tan looked at it carefully a few times and did not feel that there was anything wrong with the sound of the birds. Jiao Yuan thought for a while and said, "You are saying that the bird in the drama should be a big cuckoo, but the TV is playing the sound of 4 cuckoo?" Little Pomelo nodded. "Hey, you can even see that. You are so observant. I didn't notice it just now." Jiao Yuan patted his thigh excitedly and ran to the master bedroom. He pulled out a book from his father's bookshelf and flipped through it. Then, he started to discuss with little Pomelo about the differences between the different species of cuckoos in the rhododendron genus and which species was the cuckoo bird. Jiaoma did not know much about this, but she did not object to the children's behavior. Sometimes, it was good to be serious about something. It was good to watch TV and find bugs occasionally. At least, they could learn more from it. As for Zheng Tan, he had seen this kind of bird in school and heard it call out. It was the kind that sang 4 times, which was what little Pomelo said. Zheng Tan was thinking about the cuckoo birds that always jumped around the courtyard tomorrow when he heard Jiao Yuan read, "The cuckoo bird and the swallow are both symbols of male virginity. In ancient times, the villagers sacrificed them during the spring festival to pray for fertility." Before Jiao Yuan could finish reading, Jiao Ma slapped the book out of Jiao Yuan's hand and put it on the highest shelf. "Watch TV. If you don't want to watch it, take a shower and go to bed." Hearing Jiao Ma's words, Jiao Yuan pursed his lips and went to sit in the living room. Little Pomelo did not say much. She did not really understand what Jiao Yuan was reading, but seeing Jiao Ma's helpless face, she did not ask Jiao Yuan. Zheng Tan tugged at her ears. It was not easy for a child to be so serious. The next day, Zheng Tan didn't go to the residential area by the lake today. She didn't want to disturb the old lady's reunion, so she started to wander around looking for the cuckoos that the 2 children had mentioned last night. She didn't expect to see those birds that she usually saw today, but she couldn't find a single one today. Zheng Tan wanted to change his path and continue his search. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks and looked diagonally ahead. There was a person standing about 10 meters away. Yesterday, he heard that this person was transferred to another place. Today, he saw him here. Chapter 234. At this moment, Xiao Gao was looking at Zheng Tan and walking towards him. As soon as Zheng Tan saw the malicious light in this guy's eyes, he knew that he was going to take revenge. It must be because of what he did to him a few days ago. However, Zheng Tan didn't immediately run away. He wanted to see what this person was going to do. He didn't feel that it was too dangerous, but he was curious about how this person was going to take revenge. As Xiao Gao walked toward Zheng Tan, his hand reached out to the sports bag he was carrying. The bag was bulging and stuffed with things. Moreover, looking at the bag's tight strap, it was probably quite heavy. He didn't know what it was. What was in it? Zheng Tan stared at the other party. Xiao Gao didn't seem to have any intention of taking things out of the bag immediately. He was probably waiting for the best opportunity. Looking at the person getting closer and closer, Zheng Tan retracted his foot and assumed a posture ready to slip away at any time. As long as he felt something was wrong, he would run. When Xiao Gao suddenly took out the things in the bag, Zheng Tan turned around and ran to the side. The place he chose was mainly a small forest with more trees. While running, Zheng Tan kept cursing Xiao Gao in his heart. F***ck, this guy actually bought a squirt gun. Wasn't this thing for children to play with? Yes, Xiao Gao was holding a squirt gun that looked like a toy. Unlike other toys, he had modified this squirt gun. The distance and accuracy of the squirt gun were much higher than those of ordinary toy guns. Zheng Tan heard the sound of water hitting the leaves of a nearby plant. He quickly changed his direction, but he was still shot a few times. The water this person sprayed had a lemon-like smell. Zheng Tan didn't think too much about this smell. He just didn't know what the other party meant by spraying water with a lemon-like smell. If it was just ordinary lemonade, he wouldn't be afraid at all. This little bit of attack power was nothing to Zheng Tan. Anyway, he just needed to go back and take a shower. The people behind him saw the cat running further and further away, but they did not give up. Zheng Tan heard the footsteps behind him. There weren't many people walking around. Even if someone saw this scene, they might not know what was going on. They wouldn't stand up and meddle in other people's business before figuring out what was going on. However, Zheng Tan wasn't in a hurry. After all, this was Chuhua University. This was Zheng Tan's territory. He had been here for nearly 3 years, so he was naturally very familiar with this place. He even knew what time, who, where, and what they were doing. From the moment Zheng Tan bumped into Xiao Gao and noticed this person's malicious gaze, he already had an escape route in mind. Xiao Gao slowed down after chasing him for a while. He opened the cloth bag, and there was a mineral water bottle inside. It was filled with water that he had specially prepared. There was no more water in the water gun. Xiao Gao quickly opened the bottle cap, filled the water gun with water, and continued to chase. He knew which direction the cat ran in, and even if he lost it now, he could meet it again when he blocked the cat's home. Xiao Gao passed through a small grassland, turned a corner, and saw the black cat again. But what made the corner of Xiao Gao's eyes twitch was that there was not only a black cat there, but also an adult bulldog. Although the bulldog looked very funny, and there was a black patch where its eyes were, as if it had been beaten by someone, Xiao Gao could not bring himself to laugh. At this moment, the bulldog was staring at him, its crooked triangular eyes flashing with excitement and fierceness. This cat was cunning, but the scene in front of him somewhat subverted Xiao Gao's impression of cats and dogs being at odds. Generally speaking, if cats and dogs got along well, the temperament of one side, especially the temperament of the dog, should be more gentle. However, this cat and this bulldog were not gentle at all. Why did it seem like they were on the same side? Of course, Xiao Gao could tell the difference between a dog that bit and a dog that didn't. The bulldog in front of him would definitely bite fiercely. Zheng Tan stood behind Niu Zhuangzhuang and let Niu Zhuangzhuang, who was several times bigger than him, stand in front of him to block the gun. He looked at Xiao Gao proudly with his tail hooked. Niu Zhuangzhuang's owner would come here every day at this time when he had nothing to do. This was the back door area of the Faculty Activity Center. It was said that some time ago, a piece of equipment was stolen in broad daylight, so Niu Zhuangzhuang was brought here by its owner to prevent theft. They were not at the main entrance, but at the back door area where there were few people. Anyway, there were people guarding the main entrance, and there were many shady places at the back door. There was a large grassland, which was enough for Niu Zhuangzhuang to dig a hole for fun. Although Xiao Gao saw that the bull terrier was chained, he didn't want to provoke the dog. Even if the dog couldn't bite him, it would definitely attract a lot of people if it barked. Besides, he always felt that the dog chain wasn't very reliable. "You come out," Xiao Gao whispered behind the dog. Zheng Tan stood behind Niu Zhuangzhuang and raised his chin at Xiao Gao. "I won't go out, what can you do to me?" Xiao Gao stood there and waited for a while until the phone in his pocket rang. He glanced at the cat, turned around, and left in another direction. He picked up the phone and began to talk. Seeing that Xiao Gao was far away, Zheng Tan pushed Niu Zhuangzhuang, who was wagging its tail and rubbing against him, to the side. He stood up and patted its head, thinking about when he would drag some bones to reward this guy. Looking in the direction Xiao Gao left, Zheng Tan lifted his feet and walked in that direction. He didn't walk far before he heard Xiao Gao answering the phone. That person was sitting in the woods next to the plastic basketball court, facing the basketball court. Usually, Zheng Tan would hang around here. There was a sports field not far from the basketball court. He often sat in the woods behind the stands, thinking about his cat life. Xiao Gao looked back and didn't pay attention to Zheng Tan anymore, but continued to talk on the phone. "What are you doing? Are you free now?" Golden Tortoise asked. "Nothing, I'm taking revenge on the cat. By the way, didn't you say last time that cats hate the smell of lemons? It didn't work. My cat really hated lemons. After I wiped the sofa with lemons, my cat never scratched it again. Every time it saw me take a lemon, it would avoid it. But since you said lemons don't work, you can try the essential balm next time. My neighbor also has a cat, and his cat hates essential balm. If I have that much time, I might as well take on a big job. Golden tortoise, left. Actually, I don't understand. Why are you arguing with a cat? It's just a cat. Because they had a good relationship, Golden Tortoise often spoke casually. Okay, let's not talk about this. Tell me why you're calling. Okay, there's a big job that I can't take on. I'm just helping someone to contact you. They've heard of your name, Lu Ba, and they want you to take over. The price is negotiable. After saying that, he hung up the phone. Xiao Gao, who was Lu Ba by Golden Tortoise, put the phone back into his pocket and sneered. He wasn't laughing at others, he was laughing at himself. There was no need for that. Time was money. If he had the time, he might as well earn money or sleep with a girl. Why would he come here to spray a cat with a squirt gun? He felt childish just thinking about it. He felt that his IQ was lowered when he met a cat. But Lu Ba looked at the black cat hiding behind a tree and looking at him. He felt helpless. This cat was different from ordinary cats. He had seen all kinds of people and pets in the outside world, but there were very few like this black cat. To put it nicely, it was spiritual. To put it bluntly, it was evil. Whether it was a human or a spiritual animal, it wasn't easy for them to come to this world. Generally, unless it was a matter of life and death, Lu Ba wouldn't kill someone directly. He liked to do all kinds of interesting jobs to make money, but he always had a limit. He knew that if he exceeded this limit, he might not be able to live as leisurely as he wanted. Forget it. The squirt gun had been sprayed and the cat had been shot a few times. Just take it as revenge. There was no need to be so calculative with a cat. He lit a cigarette, but didn't take a few puffs. He held it between his fingers and looked at the basketball court in silence. Zheng Tan couldn't see his expression at this moment, but he felt that this person suddenly became deep and had a sense of vicissitudes. Was he pretending again? When the cigarette in his hand was almost burnt out, Xiao Gao flicked the cigarette butt into the trash can a few meters away. He stood up, stretched his arms, and took a deep breath. He looked at the sweaty young students on the basketball court and sighed, "My youth?" He paused and thought of something. He changed his tune and sang, "Birds Don't Come Back." As soon as he finished singing, Zheng Tan saw a blue shadow fly across the sky and stop on a tall sycamore tree branch beside the basketball court. Lu Ba obviously saw it too. He raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that someone would raise such a rare animal in this place. Moreover, he was confident enough to let the bird run out on its own. Even if there was a positioning ring, it wouldn't be safe, right? Unless the other party was confident. Lu Ba, who was about to leave, sat down again and looked at the bird on the tree with interest. There were many people on the basketball court. Obviously, there was a competition. It wasn't a formal competition, but a friendly competition between different schools and classes. What was interesting was that the two teams in the competition were the School of Liberal Arts, which had more females than males, and the School of Computer Science, which had more males than females. One could see the difference just by looking at the cheerleaders on both sides. Looking at the pretentious guys on one side and the pretentious girls on the other side, as well as the active players on the basketball court, this competition was very meaningful. In a friendly competition, friendship really came first. The score wasn't too big. The School of Computer Science was in the lead at around 7 or 8 points. When the School of Computer Science grabbed a rebound and was about to attack, the cheerleaders on the School of Computer Science were excited. One of them shouted, "Boys of the School of Computer Science." Originally, the people on the School of Computer Science would shout in unison, "Crush the School of Liberal Arts." But before they could say anything, a voice suddenly came from above. "Come out to receive your guests." Lu Ba, who had just opened a new bottle of mineral water because he was thirsty, spat out the water in his mouth. On the other side of the basketball court, the School of Computer Science's power forward, who was about to make a cool hook shot, stumbled. His hand slipped, and the ball directly hit the head of a teacher from the School of Engineering who had come over as a guest referee. Chapter 235. After howling for a while, the bird probably knew that its words were displeasing. Before the people at the basketball court could kick up a fuss, the bird hurriedly flew away again. Zheng Tan followed the bird's flight path and saw a family car parked on a road not far from here. Zheng Tan recognized the car. It belonged to General's owner. No wonder the bird flew here. Its owner probably came here to look for someone and took it out for a walk. During this period of time, the bird was more restricted. It used to be let out to play for 2 days a week, but now it rarely came out once a week. The reason was that the bird bullied the magpies in the school. It almost caused public outrage among magpie fans. There were a few times when it quarreled with people. The ugly magpie that General called a magpie was a symbol of good luck in the eyes of others. Moreover, magpies were not considered ugly. They were considered good-looking among the birds in the school. In order to not attract more hatred, General's owner directly put it in confinement. In fact, before it bullied the magpies, it had a history. Compared to magpies, General hated cuckoos more. It always called cuckoos parasites because cuckoos laid their eggs in other birds' nests and removed the original eggs from the nest. Once, General happened to catch a cuckoo that was committing a crime when it went out to play. Thus, it began to chase it away. During this period of time, no cuckoos were seen in the courtyard. This was General's contribution. After the magpie incident, some people finally couldn't help but form a group to complain. However, when General was locked up, the other birds in the surrounding area felt good. The ones who suffered were the few families who lived in the surrounding area. For people like Zheng Tan who had good ears, it was difficult to ignore the bird's voice. Every day, General faced the barbed wire on the balcony and lowered its head to sing, "The moon bends over the 9 provinces." Its claws scratched the barbed wire rhythmically. Can you imagine the feeling of wanting to shout F***y every morning when you go out to face the morning sun, ready to start a day of study, work, and life? Or to stretch your paws and prepare to take a stroll when you hear those sad songs like, "Hey, hey, hey, so unfair. When will it disappear, the hatred in my heart," in a trembling tone? Can you imagine the feeling of wanting to shout F***ck in your heart when you go out to face the morning sun every morning, ready to start a day of study, work, and life? Or to move your paws and prepare to take a stroll when you hear those sad songs like, "Hey, hey, so unfair. When will it disappear, the hatred in my heart?" Even some of the more sensitive people might think of some unfair treatment at work, and their mood for the day would probably plummet. Now, this fellow had finally come out and started to take revenge on society. Seeing what it had shouted just now, the people from the Academy of Economics and Technology would probably be used as a joke for a long time, especially during the competition. Even with his eyes closed, Zheng Tan could imagine the moment the opposing team shouted, "Come out and receive the guests," during the game, and the scene of all the players of the Academy of Economics and Economics slipping under their feet. Looking at the bird that flew towards the car parked by the roadside, Lu Ba turned around and looked at the black cat that was squatting behind a tree. "You know that bird, right? Are you good friends?" Lu Ba felt that intelligent animals must have a lot of communication with each other. Judging from the way the cat interacted with the bulldog, it probably had a good relationship with the bird. Zheng Tan's eyes were filled with disdain when he heard this. Was he on good terms with the bird that sought revenge on society? Lu Ba didn't ask about General anymore. He didn't want to kidnap a rare parrot, and he would never do such a thing. Staring at the black cat not far away for a while, Lu Ba smiled. "How did your father teach you?" Parrots had relatively long lifespans, and the longer they lived with humans, the more skills they learned. Therefore, in terms of quantity, there were relatively more intelligent parrots. However, cats were different. They didn't have long lifespans, and they were eccentric and difficult to tame. Although there were many of them, the proportion of cats that could be considered intelligent was definitely not high, and a cat like the one in front of him was even rarer. Therefore, Lu Ba was curious. Zheng Tan looked at him. Since he had already found this place, he should have some understanding of him. The father that Lu Ba mentioned was probably the Jiaopa. Unfortunately, the development of this behavior basically had nothing to do with the Jiaopa. Lu Ba didn't expect to get an answer from a cat, so he just sighed with emotion. After stretching, Lu Ba took out a business card from his pocket. It was a very simple business card with simple information printed on the white paper. Other than that, there weren't any fancy decorations, and it looked very cheap. Lu Ba put the business card where he was sitting and looked at the black cat not far away. Marriage, divorce, mistresses looking for people to beat people up, making fake certificates and false accounts, business espionage, private consulting, and so on. Other than murder, arson, and some other things that are beyond my ability, everything is negotiable as long as you can afford it. My credibility is guaranteed, and I will keep the privacy of my clients absolutely confidential. Of course, we only accept high-class orders. Don't bother me with small orders. It's a waste of time. After saying that, Lu Ba put down the business card, turned around, and left. He didn't expect the cat to understand much of what he said. He said all this and put the business card here purely on a whim. There were all kinds of business cards and flyers thrown into the trash can on campus. In many people's eyes, such an inconspicuous business card would be thrown away, so Lu Ba didn't have much hope that this business card would be used. After making sure that Lu Ba had left, Zheng Tan walked over and looked at the business card that was put there. From a professional point of view, this business card was really unqualified. If the teachers with obsessive-compulsive disorder saw it, they would definitely criticize it. There wasn't much introduction on the business card. There were only two things. One was the number 68 in the middle, which was probably a code name. The second was the email address below the number. Other than that, there was no other information. Just by looking at this business card, Zheng Tan couldn't imagine what the person had said before he left to introduce his business. After staring at the business card for a while, Zheng Tan hesitated for a while. Then he stretched his neck and sniffed it. He didn't smell anything strange, and the business card wasn't dirty. After thinking for a while, Zheng Tan opened his mouth and bit the corner of the business card, then ran home. After returning home, Zheng Tan put the business card in the hidden drawer of his cat tree. That drawer was specially used for storing business cards. Zheng Tan didn't know if he would need this business card in the future, but it wouldn't take much effort to keep it, so he just put it there for now. After Lu Ba left, Zheng Tan didn't see him in the next few days when he wandered around the campus. When he was free, Zheng Tan would go to the affiliated hospital and visit the old lady in the residential area by the lake. Now the old lady was living a good life. With someone accompanying her, she wasn't lonely, and she was smiling a lot more. The old man who was said to be the old lady's lover more than 50 years ago didn't seem like an evil person, but Zheng Tan felt that this person wasn't a harmless and kind person either. Since he was able to build such a big business, he definitely wasn't a simple-minded person. However, this person was really nice to the old lady, and that was enough. Perhaps because he loved the old lady, the old man didn't care about other people, but he was nice to Zheng Tan. After all, the old lady's attitude was there. Today, when he saw Zheng Tan, the old man came out with food with a smile. When Zheng Tan listened to their conversation, he knew that the old man wanted to take the old lady to the south. It was warm there, and there were many connections. The medical treatment there was not inferior to here. If there was anything wrong with the old lady, it would be more convenient for her to receive treatment, and they could also hold a wedding or something. However, the old lady didn't agree. When Zheng Tan went home after wandering around outside, he found that Xiaogua had come. Today was Saturday. Although it wasn't a working day, Xiaogua should be busy. Zhang Zian didn't expect him to have time to come here. Looking at the situation in the living room, Xiaogua and Jiaoma had been chatting for a while, but Zhang Zian didn't know what they were talking about. Jiaoma frowned. After lying on the sofa and listening for a while, Zheng Tan found out that the Green Wings Association had been invited to participate in an event. It was said that there were several similar organizations at home and abroad participating in this event. As a newly established association, the Green Wings Association needed such an opportunity to expand its influence and gain the recognition of more similar and larger organizations. It was no wonder that Xiaogua valued it so much. If this was successful, there was no doubt that the benefits would be great. As the ace of the obvious pet center, Zheng Tan would definitely be the first to be listed by Xiaogua. This event didn't require them to bring many expensive varieties. Of course, they had to do a good job of keeping up appearances. Expensive varieties that looked good, such as the ones in Little Gua's shop that were responsible for acting cute, would definitely be brought along. Since there was no requirement for expensive breeds or pedigree certificates, with Zheng Tan as the ace, Xiaogua would definitely use it. More than half of the advertisements in the store were supported by this non-expensive black cat, which had no pedigree certificate. There would probably be some programs that would require each family to bring out their trump cards to show off. Other than Zheng Tan, Xiaogua had thought about it all night and couldn't think of a better candidate than this black cat. Although he knew that it wouldn't be easy to convince the Jiao family, Xiaogua still decided to come and persuade the Jiao family. Thus, the scene that Zheng Tan saw when he entered the door was created. After hearing Xiaogua's explanation, Jiao Ma's first reaction was to object. She couldn't leave, so she had to stay at home to take care of the children. She had 2 children at home, so she couldn't just leave. If her cat went somewhere far away, she would be worried too. She had raised her cat for almost 3 years, so she naturally knew her cat's temper. It didn't like cages, hated being put on a leash, was a bit casual, did whatever it wanted, had a bad temper, and was always suspicious. It was fine at home, but it would be hard to take care of outside. Once she listed all of its shortcomings, Jiao Ma couldn't stop. The more she thought about it, the more worried she became. Xiaogua persuaded and assured her for an hour, but she still didn't give in. Jiao Ma sent an email to Jiao Pa and complained about what had happened. The next day, after reading the Jiao Pa's reply, Jiao Ma sighed heavily. "It's all because you spoiled it." Jiao Pa meant to let Zheng Tan make his own choice. Zheng Tan had analyzed the pros and cons last night. He wasn't really interested in being in the limelight, but if Green Wings, a newly established association, was still a weak chicken compared to other large organizations, Zheng Tan wouldn't be able to gain much from it. After all, his main source of income now was Xiaogua. His cat still had to feed his family. This was the goal that Zheng Tan had set for himself. Xiaogua was the person in charge of this event. If Green Wings lost face, Xiaogua's store would lose face. If Xiaogua's store lost face, Zheng Tan wouldn't benefit from it either. Moreover, Xiaogua said that he would only be there for a week, so it wouldn't be long. Chapter 236. After getting Jiao Ma's approval, Xiaogua was very excited. This time, he was aiming for a few awards. He wanted to get as many as he could to increase his influence. The time was set at the beginning of June. Xiaogua had been busy preparing for the event and contacting some partners. This time, not only was there an exchange and competition between cats, but there were also related products and food displays. This was the main source of Xiaogua's income. Now that his own brand in his store had been established, he could use this event to promote more. Therefore, this time, Xiaogua was ambitious and ready to go all out. After spending Children's Day with little Pomelo at home, Zheng Tan began to run to the pet center. Xiaogua had made a few mission plans, and Zheng Tan had to familiarize himself with them first. Jiao Ma also began to prepare for Zheng Tan's long trip. Even though Xiaogua had made all kinds of promises, Jiao Ma was still worried. She worked in front of the computer for more than 3 hours and specially printed out a list to give to Charlie, who was in charge of looking after Zheng Tan. She also personally went to the pet center to talk to Charlie for more than an hour. Zheng Tan had heard so many things that Zheng Tan was tired of hearing them, but he didn't feel disgusted. This feeling of being valued was pretty good. The event location was in Linzhou City. Xiaogua booked a bus and several accompanying cars this time. More than 80% of Xiaogua's team members were with him. It took about 10 hours to drive from Chuhua City to Linzhou City. However, Xiaogua had started to prepare in advance, so he didn't worry about any inconveniences during the 10 hours. There were a total of 6 cats participating in the event, 3 from Xiaogua's store, and cats from other pet stores or clubs of the Green Wings Association. There were other participants in Chuhua City, but those cat owners didn't travel with Xiaogua. When the time came, those cat owners would fly to Linzhou City by themselves. If they wanted to travel together, they would contact Xiaogua. Different from the other cats in cages, Zheng Tan had a lot of freedom. He occupied a seat and slept there. Charlie sat next to him. Charlie was now a real cat nanny, and Zheng Tan's special nanny during working hours. Charlie looked at the cat sleeping peacefully next to him, and then looked at the person in front of him who had to take the cat out of the cage to comfort it because the cat he was taking care of kept crying. He sighed in his heart. The cats he took care of had different temperaments and personalities. Each cat had its own advantages, and each had its own troubles. Although the cat next to him was brave and had a strong mentality, It had too many bad habits. Charlie opened the folder in his hand and flipped through the materials inside. Among them were the precautions that Jiaoma had given him for taking care of her black cat. In fact, Charlie had some understanding of Zheng Tan's habits even without these. After all, they had worked together for so long. But every time he looked at these precautions, Charlie felt a stomachache. Forget it. As long as there was no mess during the event, he could accept the rest. Midway, the team stopped to rest for a while, eat lunch, and go to the bathroom. Zheng Tan also asked Charlie to take him to the bathroom during mealtime. He never used cat litter, only the bathroom. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Zheng Tan returned to the car and continued to sleep without a care in the world. Charlie sent a text message to his girlfriend. Cats nowadays are really hard to take care of. But the difference this time was that there was an extra person and a cat on the bus. This cat came from a club in Chuhua City. The owner of the cat was a woman in her 40s or 50s. She had taken her cat to sit in the car at the back. She probably felt that the car was too boring, so she came to the bus after resting. Now she was bragging about how good her cat was, how delicate it was, and how many awards it had won in the past. Zheng Tan had been sleeping well, but he was woken up by the woman's shrill voice. At this time, many people on the bus were preparing to rest, but they didn't expect that there would be an extra person. It was said that this woman's husband was also a vice president in the Green Wings Association, but he didn't have as much authority as Xiaogua. But the people on the bus still had to give her some face. Even if they were annoyed, they didn't show it on their faces. Zheng Tan couldn't stand it. This woman was too noisy, and he was annoyed just listening to her. He got up and looked over there. The cat in the woman's arms was a foreign short-hair cat. It looked really cute and well-behaved, but its owner was too noisy. Maybe it noticed Zheng Tan's unkind gaze, but the cat glanced at Zheng Tan and then shrank into its owner's arms. The woman, who was showing off her cat and almost criticized the other cats as worthless, felt a strange movement in her arms. She quickly stroked the cat's fur and comforted it. As she comforted it, she called out, "My darling, my little sweetheart," which gave Zheng Tan goosebumps. The woman followed her cat's gaze and looked in Zheng Tan's direction. Her heart trembled. It wasn't that she was timid, but she felt a chill down her spine when she suddenly met the black cat's cold eyes. She didn't like all black cats because they looked too ferocious. Previously, she didn't even notice that Xiaogua had a black cat with her. In her eyes, there was only her own cat. Now that she knew, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. The cat in her arms also curled up in fear. The woman and the cat suddenly fell silent. The people on the bus looked at Zheng Tan, and then looked at the woman and the cat. They were happy. Although this black cat had a bad temper, sometimes it was quite useful. No wonder their boss always liked to take this cat out. When the motorcade stopped at a gas station to refuel, the woman got out of the bus with the foreign short-hair cat in her arms and went to another car. When she got out of the bus, she complained that Xiaogua had brought such a cat and that it was embarrassing. After being glared at by Xiaogua, she turned around and got into another car. Around 8 o'clock that night, the motorcade arrived at a hotel in Lin City. This was a place that had been booked in advance, and the pets could be settled there. Zheng Tan was still a special case. He was directly taken in and had a bed to himself. In the evening, Jiaoma called Charlie to find out about Zheng Tan's situation. They rested in the hotel for a day. The event would start the day after tomorrow, which was this Saturday, and it would last for 2 days. From 9 to 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, the exhibitors had to be checked by the veterinarian before the event began. Although this was only an exchange event with unlimited cat breeds, there was also a cat public exhibition program, which was divided into 4 groups: kitten group, adult cat group, sterilized cat group, and house cat group. The first 3 groups were definitely more expensive cat breeds. This event gathered rare breeds from different countries, including Persian cats, hairless cats, Garfield cats, Koenig's curly-haired cats, ragdolls, Maine cats, and other international famous cats with a total value of nearly 10 million yuan. It was enough to satisfy the audience. In addition, the activities on Saturday included a charity bazaar, some lectures on cat love, and a quiz on cat love. On Sunday, there were more interactive activities that were specially arranged. Many people hated cats, And the reason why they were not close to cats was mostly attributed to the temperament of cats. Most cats like to scratch people. When they were happy, they would talk to you, and when they were unhappy, they would ignore you. This time, the organizers wanted to show people the other side of cats. When Zheng Tan was listening to Charlie's conversation on the bus, he knew that some specially trained cats and some very docile and cute cats were invited to the interactive activities to make the audience closer to the cats, or to have a better impression of the cats. Zheng Tan's task was on Sunday. Xiaoguo's task for Zheng Tan was parkour. This was not difficult for Zheng Tan, and this time, Zheng Tan was working with a beautiful woman with a great figure. Beautiful women were indispensable everywhere. Being able to work with a beautiful woman made Zheng Tan feel a little better. He heard that there would be lectures on pet health and medical treatment, consultations, exchanges on pet cat daily care techniques, and a series of activities for pet cats, such as free beauty treatments, epidemic prevention, and physical examinations for pet cats. The purpose was to spread the concept of a fashionable and healthy cat love life. There would definitely be a lot of people and a lot of cats. On Saturday, Zheng Tan and the other participating cats were inspected. Zheng Tan saw all kinds of cats. There were a few hairless cats. Zheng Tan stared at them for a long time. Fortunately, the temperature was still warm. If it was winter, he would have to wear clothes and stay in a heated room. There were also curly-haired cats and curly-eared cats. Zheng Tan looked at them with interest. He was used to seeing foreign short-haired cats with a flat face. Looking at these strange cats was a novelty, especially from the perspective of a cat. He didn't know if it was because of the different perspective, but the cats that he used to think were all kinds of deformed and weird now felt okay. Zheng Tan could see a lot of emotions in the eyes of these cats. Some cats that looked fierce were actually timid. Some looked powerful but were actually timid. They were scared easily. During the inspection, a cat let out a fart that scared itself. It was a silent fart. Zheng Tan wouldn't have known if she hadn't heard it from the people over there. But she still laughed for a long time after she found out. Looking at all kinds of cats, Zheng Tan thought, what would happen if peanut candy came? However, it was better not to think too much about the impossible. Peanut candy had always been left alone. Li Yuanba had personally taken care of it since it was young. It loved to cause trouble, so Xiaoguo and the others didn't dare to bring peanut candy along. If it came, it wouldn't be peaceful. It was said that the total value of the cats participating in the exhibition was close to 10 million yuan. If it accidentally scratched the champion cats, Xiaoguo would have to pay a lot of compensation. In the venue, charmingly naive Persian cats and chubby British shorthair cats stared at the people coming and going with their big watery eyes. Occasionally, they would call out to their owners who were holding them. Looking at how calm they were, it probably wasn't their first time participating in this kind of event. Chapter 237. Zheng Tan was led by Charlie, and there was a tall beauty next to him. Charlie had been blushing and stuttering. Although he already had a girlfriend, he was still nervous in the face of such a beauty. This beauty was Zheng Tan's partner in the interactive session tomorrow. Her name was Jean Ling. It was said that she was a model and also a client of the pet center. This time, she was invited by Xiaoguo to help. Zheng Tan looked at Jean Ling critically and gave her 80 points. He felt that it would be better if the skirt was shorter. Unfortunately, it couldn't be too revealing. There were many children who came here. If they were dressed too skimpily, the parents of their children would definitely complain. There had been complaints about skimpy clothes at famous cat shows before. Therefore, even if it was summer, the people working in the venue would still pay attention to their image. After getting familiar with Jean Ling, Zheng Tan left Charlie and nestled in Jean Ling's arms. Although Jean Ling didn't have much contact with Zheng Tan, she was very active. As long as Zheng Tan made a slight move, she knew where to go. She had heard that this cat was very arrogant and had a bad temper. The people in Xiaoguo's shop all followed its wishes, and she wouldn't refute the cat's wishes. It would be easier for them to cooperate with each other tomorrow. Zheng Tan was not interested in the competitions of the precious cat species. He just glanced at them and asked Jean Ling to go to the house cat group. This time, the house cat group was exhibiting a dragon Li cat owned by a client of Xiaoguo's pet center. This dragonly cat was participating in a public competition for the first time and was a little anxious in the cage. Every cat that participated in the competition had to reach out and hug it, feel its bone mass, look at its muscle state, head, body, tail, and limbs, coordination, and the health of the cat, and so on. When Zheng Tan looked over there, a foreign judge was holding a cat, touching the cat's fur and evaluating the cat. The host next to him was holding a microphone and translating the judge's words to the audience. The cat was also very patient. It didn't show any impatience after being hugged and touched. It was probably used to it. Of course, these judges must know cats very well and know how to better comfort a cat. Originally, in Xiaoguo's mind, the best cat in the house cat group should be Zheng Tan. Unfortunately, the Jiao family didn't agree, and Zheng Tan didn't want to go. Not only did it have to be locked in a cage for onlookers, but most of the cats participating in that kind of competition had good tempers. The judges wouldn't have too much reaction when they held them. Zheng Tan definitely couldn't stand these. Another reason was that it was said that non-sterilized cats that won this kind of award were basically treated as breeding cats. Zheng Tan definitely didn't want to have anything to do with a female cat. There were also many people in the house cat group. Compared with the expensive cat breeds, the cats in the house cat group were more approachable. Expensive cats were only used for viewing. It wasn't easy to raise them. They were too expensive and took a lot of effort. However, people had the most contact with house cats, such as dragonly cats, which were all common cats. Zheng Tan looked around. Other than the commonly seen cats and the popular dragonly, there were also Linqing Persian cats that people were interested in. There were 2 Persian cats participating in the house cat group competition. One was a white Persian cat with mandarin duck eyes, and the other was a whipping hydrangea. The so-called whipping hydrangea looked similar to the white Persian cat, but its tail was black, and there was a black patch on its head. Its tail was long and could be swung to the black patch on its head, so it was called whipping hydrangea. Speaking of which, this cat reminded Zheng Tan of the cat called Longan that he had seen before. It was just that Longan's hair was short and there was no black patch on its head. At the house cat competition, one of the judges was from China. She looked young and was quite good-looking. She could be considered a beauty. This beautiful judge attracted the attention of many spectators. When she evaluated a participating house cat, she also stroked, teased, and talked to the cat. The cat also became very docile in her hands. Charlie flipped through the information in his hand and talked to Jean Ling about the beautiful judge. Hearing their words, Zheng Tan knew that the beautiful judge named Gong Qin was also a veterinary professional. She had taken her own cat to participate in more than one competition, but later she didn't have time to take care of the cat because of work. Later, she didn't raise it much. However, she was qualified as a CFA judge. Sometimes she was invited to be a judge in such activities and had contact with more cats. While Charlie and Jean Ling were talking about the beautiful referee, Zheng Tan looked around. Suddenly, her eyes paused as if she saw an acquaintance. No, it was 2 acquaintances, and Zheng Tan jumped down from Jean Ling's arms and walked over there. Jean Ling was shocked when she saw the cat jump away. She was afraid that the cat would run away, but then she saw that the black cat didn't run around, but walked to the side area. She was relieved and followed Charlie. In an area on the side, several animal charity organizations were there. Some cat owners gathered there to consult. There were rows of chairs next to them. The people who came in to watch and some cat owners who participated in the activities rested there when they were free. Fang Mengmeng was holding a pamphlet given by the animal charity organization in her hand and was looking through it. Fang Xiaokong was chatting with someone next to her. It seemed that he met an acquaintance here again and was being pulled to chat. Next to Fang Mengmeng was a cat with tricolored patches on its body. In the area around this cat, there was no other cat except for it within a radius of 5 meters. Even the cats that were brought there to rest would scream at it with their hair standing on end, pressing their ears and shouting for the cat owner to take them away. Zheng Tan calculated the time. To me, this guy was almost 1 year old. Sometimes, Zheng Tan was envious of the Monseigneur's good genes. It could be seen by looking at Peanut Candy and Demi. Although they were the 3rd generation in terms of size, they were obviously bigger than other cats. Of course, There were many cats that came here to participate in the competition, especially those cat breeds that were larger in size. Coupled with their fluffy long hair, they looked very big, so Demi was not too outstanding. However, Demi's hair was not as fluffy as those long-haired cats. If the hair was removed, Demi was definitely bigger than those cats. Zheng Tan walked around the people coming and going and observed Demi, who was quietly squatting there. In Zheng Tan's heart, he had always classified himself as the same generation as Li Yuanba and the Monsignor. In this way, Peanut Candy was his nephew, and Demi was his grandnephew. Demi had inherited the aura of the Monsignor and Li Yuanba very well. It could be seen from the reactions of the surrounding cats. Moreover, when Demi pulled a long face, it directly reminded Zheng Tan of Li Yuanba. Demi was squatting there with its eyelids slightly lowered, as if it did not care about everything around it. It was not until Zheng Tan walked over that it raised its head and looked at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan did not know if this little guy still remembered him. After all, when Demi was taken away, it was still so small. Also, if this child inherited its father's temperament, would it fight with him on the spot? Just as Zheng Tan was thinking about whether to get closer, Demi had already come up to him. It sniffed, and the initial wariness in its eyes lessened, and there was a sense of intimacy. When Fang Mingming's gaze moved away from the small booklet and looked at Demi, she saw Demi, who was usually cold to other cats and would even slap them if they were annoyed, tilting its head and rubbing against the black cat. Fang Mingming stared at Zheng Tan for a while, then suddenly shouted, "Are you Black Charcoal?" Fang Xiaokong, who was chatting with someone, heard her and looked over. His gaze fell on Zheng Tan. "Yo, Black Charcoal, why are you here?" Because his daughter said that she wanted to come to Linzhou City to participate in this event, Fang Xiaokong specially cleared his weekend to accompany his daughter on the plane. His wife did not follow, so that Fang Xiaokong could perform more and spend more time with his daughter. His daughter wanted to bring Demi over, and Fang Xiaokong had already prepared all kinds of documents. At this time, Charlie and Jean Ling also came over, and Fang Xiaokong chatted with them for a while. "There's a competition tomorrow? That's good, let's go support them tomorrow," Fang Xiaokong said with a look of anticipation. Fang Mengmeng nodded at the side. "Mr. Fang, is this your family's cat? Which competition did it participate in?" Charlie asked. Jean Ling was also curious. The cat in front of her felt a little different from other cats, but she couldn't tell why. Could it be a cat breed that she didn't know? "This is my daughter's cat, but it didn't participate in the competition." Fang Xiaokong didn't say too much. Since he knew that Charlie was from the pet center, he was on guard. Air Mao said that Demi's father was in the pet center. In the event venue, Fang Xiaokong had a special certificate. Demi didn't participate in any competitions, but was brought in for a walk. Then, Fang Mengmeng could communicate more with the cat friends and ask about raising cats. The degree of freedom was much greater than the cat owners who brought in the competition. Anyway, there were people who knew, so such a certificate was very simple. Charlie and Jean Ling wanted to take a closer look because they were curious about Demi. When they were about to reach out and touch it, Demi raised its head and glanced at them. Charlie and Jean Ling's hearts immediately trembled. This cat's eyes were so cold, and they felt that this cat was not to be trifled with. Cough. This cat must be very troublesome to raise, right? Charlie retracted his hand and said, "It's not troublesome, Demi is very obedient." When Fang Mengmeng mentioned Demi, she smiled and squinted her eyes. She reached out her tender white hand and touched Demi's head. Many cats gave people a completely different feeling when they had a straight face and when they acted cute. For example, Demi who faced Charlie and Jean Ling and Zheng Tan and Fang Mengmeng. One was cold and the other was gentle. One was difficult to get close to, and the other took the initiative to get close to. When Demi raised its head to look at people, due to the lighting in this area of the venue, Demi's pupils shrank slightly. Together with Demi's straight face that resembled Li Yuanba's, it looked much sharper. When its pupils dilated due to excitement, coupled with its coquettish actions, it let people know that this cat could also get close to people. That was even more adorable. Charlie looked at the difference between before and after and laughed dryly. He thought for a while and said, "Mr. Fang, your Demi is quite similar to the two cats in our pet center." I'm telling you, I'm definitely not lying to you. One of the cats is called Li Yuanba, and the other cat is Li Yuanba's son, called Peanut Candy. Fang Xiaokong was already thinking of leaving. The moment Charlie opened his mouth, he said the two taboo names that Mao mentioned. Anyway, his daughter had played here for a long time, so he might as well leave first. When Fang Xiaokong held Fang Mingming's hand and left, Demi raised its tail and did not look around. It followed closely beside Fang Xiaokong and Fang Mingming. It was too lazy to pay attention to the people and cats around it. Chapter 238. On Saturday, Zheng Tan familiarized himself with the general events and layout of the venue. There were many people who came over that day, especially those who liked cats but couldn't raise cats for various reasons. They were addicted to watching, and when they left, they discussed coming together tomorrow. When they returned to the hotel, Zheng Tan listened to Charlie and the others talking about the day's events. Xiaoguo went out to expand his network. The harvest of the first day of the event made Xiaoguo satisfied. He won 3 medals. It was not a good result, but it was not bad either. It was enough to keep up appearances. Xiaoguo's main focus was on cat food and peripheral products. The sales of cat food were good today, and there were a few people who contacted Xiaoguo to supply it. It was said that the cat of the woman who was with Xiaoguo's team and who was shouting on the bus in the middle of the way did not get a result that satisfied her this time. The cat almost fought with another cat that participated at the time. However, for the woman, although it was a pity that she did not win an award, she still loved her cat. This made Zheng Tan's impression of her a lot better. In fact, many cat owners who came to participate in this event, even if their cats didn't win any awards, they were only there to play a minor role. They didn't care much about the gains and losses, unlike those who mainly did commercial-oriented advertisements for breeding cats. At the venue, Zheng Tan saw several cat owners comforting each other. Some of them even comforted their cats. They did not care if their cats were depressed because they did not win an award. Perhaps they were also telling themselves that the important thing was to participate. In their hearts, their cats were always the best. Zheng Tan did not listen carefully to the discussions of others. He only knew that Xiaoguo and the others had a good harvest on the first day. He had to prepare more for tomorrow's project. In the evening, Zheng Tan and Jean Ling practiced together again. In fact, it was mainly Zheng Tan who was running. Jean Ling just had to sit there and be a qualified vase. When Xiaoguo came back at night, he was worried that Zheng Tan might be under some kind of psychological pressure. He didn't expect to find that Zheng Tan had already fallen asleep on the bed. Compared to Zheng Tan's calmness, Xiaoguo was still a little worried. Even if the cat performed well when his team was shooting advertisements, there would be too many people at the venue tomorrow. The audience, especially the children, would be screaming and yelling, which would affect the cat's mood. Today, several of the participating cats were in bad condition. Sometimes, slow cats had their advantages. Take the few cats in Xiaoguo's store for example. If you really wanted to talk about psychological quality, there was nothing much to talk about. To put it bluntly, their reactions were slow, and their temperaments were too gentle. Xiaoguo knew that Zheng Tan was different from other cats. Moreover, because of the great harvest on the first day, he hoped that more people would know about Green Wings, obviously, Pet Center, and the products in the industry chain that he had created. There should be good results, right? In the evening, Xiaoguo, who was supposed to fall asleep after drinking too much, had insomnia. He didn't fall asleep until the second half of the night. The next day, the second day of the event, Zheng Tan got up in the morning and had breakfast refreshed. He picked up Charlie's wet and warm towel and wiped his face. Then he followed Xiaoguo and the others to the venue. Before she got out of the car, Zheng Tan looked out of the car window. There were a lot of people outside the venue. There were a lot of sheds selling pet necessities, and there were also a variety of cat climbing frames on display. There was a long line at the other entrance of the venue. There were many people who brought cats here today because there were a series of activities for pet cats, such as free hairdressing, epidemic prevention, physical examination, and so on. Of course, the free activities were limited. If you wanted something more detailed, you would have to contact and make an appointment. Then you would go directly to the physical store. Today's free activities were just to show off to the cat owners. The layout of the venue was also slightly changed. There was a space in the center for the cats to perform and interact. As soon as Xiaoguo arrived at the venue, he was pulled over to discuss things. When he left, he asked Charlie and Jean Ling to take Zheng Tan to familiarize himself with the environment. Zheng Tan looked at the staff over there who were checking the cats and the person in charge who participated in this event. By the way, they were confirming whether there were any objections to the order of appearance. After all, the order of appearance was also drawn by drawing lots. No one could blame anyone, and some people who couldn't come in time because of unexpected situations would change the order. There were 10 cats participating in this segment. Zheng Tan was the 7th. If it started at 9 o'clock, according to the calculation of 15 minutes per cat, it would get to 11 o'clock. Of course, there was no absolute statement about the time of each cat. Some might end in 5 minutes, and some might last longer. The deciding factor was the cat's performance and their popularity. They could attract more attention from the audience and ask for photos. The higher the popularity, the longer the duration. Zheng Tan looked at the list in Charlie's hand, then looked away uninterestedly. At this time, some of the cat owners and cats who participated in this segment arrived one after another. Zheng Tan glanced at them. The cats looked very smart. The interaction with their owners or trainers showed how familiar they were with each other. Moreover, these cats didn't have a leash, but a few of them were wearing small clothes. They looked quite familiar. Zheng Tan also found that most of these cats were not purebred expensive cats. Also, many expensive breeds had many defects. Some people were already standing on the second floor, looking at the open space on the first floor expectantly. "BC, let's go," Charlie called out to Zheng Tan. They were going there to report and sign. The inspectors needed to look at the photos of people and cats during the registration. Because they were going to appear in public, Xiaoguo asked them to call Zheng Tan BC. The name of the contestant on the registration list was Black Sea, and the breed was a domestic cat. There were only 10 contestants, so it didn't take long to check and sign on the spot. Jean Ling took Zheng Tan and rested on the side after wandering around. It's starting. Someone in the crowd called out to his partner. Zheng Tan glanced at the crowd that was gathering quickly. Many people were holding cameras and DV. A few fathers let their children sit on their necks, while the children held the DV and took photos. Seeing so many people paying attention to him, Zheng Tan, who had a casual attitude, felt that his performance later must not be too bad. Since he had decided to participate in the event, he had to show some ability so that those with cameras and DV would not be too disappointed. The owner of the first cat to appear had put in more effort. The clothes on the cat would not interfere with its movements, and when it appeared, it stood on a ball and rolled out. Rolling a ball looked very simple, but in fact, it was not. When Zheng Tan first tried it in the pet center, he failed several times. Later, he got used to it. Good. Someone clapped and cheered. He didn't know if it was a trick. After that person cheered and applauded, the surrounding crowd also applauded. After the cat rolled the ball, it also jumped in circles, drilled in circles, and jumped obstacles. Although people had seen these projects in circus performances on TV, the feeling was different on the spot. At the end of the performance, the cat stood on the man's shoulder and bowed to the audience, causing another round of applause. It didn't react much to those who took photos and turned on the flash. It just narrowed its eyes. In general, it was calm. After the performance, several lucky audience members who had drawn ticket numbers went to take photos with the cat and its owner. Zheng Tan observed carefully. A few of the people in charge had already started telling the people in the crowd not to use the flashing lights. After all, not every cat was as indifferent to the flashing lights as the cat at the beginning of the show. The next few cat performances were similar. Some male audience members' attention was on the cat owners with cat ears. There was a cat group's musical performance that attracted a lot of attention. The musical instruments were different from professional instruments. Some of them were more like children's toys, but they could make sounds. Moreover, there were special modifications on them that made it easier for cats to operate. Although the cat group only played a song like "Happy Birthday to You," which was very simple, and there were a few wrong notes in the middle of the performance, people still applauded enthusiastically. The cat in front of Zheng Tan performed single parallel bars. It only used its two front paws to move from one end of the bars to the other. When it played the horizontal bar, there were a few more movements. For a cat, it was very good to be able to do that. Zheng Tan had thought that the performance was too simple and that people would be dissatisfied. However, it turned out that he had thought too much. People didn't have high expectations for animals. Even if the cats only jumped 2 circles and did 2 somersaults, people would still feel that it was worth it to come. 7th, Black Sea from the Green Wings Association in Chuhua City. When the host announced the name, his heart actually stopped for a second. There were very few cats with this name. Even if it was an English name, this name was too strange. Black was fine, but there was also a C? What did C mean? Could there be a, B, and so on? After the audience heard the host's name, some people became excited. F*CK, is it that BC? A live BC. I didn't expect to see a live BC performance on this trip. I used to watch its cat food advertisement video and felt good, but this is a live show. I can't shout cut. I don't know how the performance will be. What is BC? Is it very famous? It's obvious that you don't mix in the XX pet form. This cat is very famous in the XX form. My cat food is the brand of this cat's advertisement. Some people were talking about who Black Sea was, and the props had already begun to be set up in the field. Looking at the props that were set up one by one, the attention of the onlookers gradually shifted. F*CK, what is that prop? Is it a wall? Those stools marked with letters are a little strange. Are they going to go in a zigzag line? What a beauty! Is this going to be a Beauty and the Beast show? Where is the beast? Amidst the discussion, Zheng Tan and Jean Ling walked into the field. Jean Ling was dressed in a small and fresh style today. She looked more like a little girl next door. When she smiled, she had a sweet and warm feeling. This made some of the male audience stare at her. Zheng Tan didn't bring any decorations or those small clothes. It could be said that he was naked on the field. When he entered the field, Jean Ling was the one who attracted attention. However, there were also people who paid attention to Zheng Tan and knew more about cats. They could tell that the cat that was appearing now was different from the cats in front of him.